Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Year of Classics. I don't even know why we're speaking, Chad. We should do this whole episode silent. Imagine that. Imagine the editing I would go through, having to go through 6 film discussions of silent films in silent film. Anyway, welcome to 1927 or 28 or 29, depending on what part of the Oscar race you're looking at. Welcome, Chad. How you doing? Welcome to Picture This.
I'm doing great. Thank you. I love doing picture
The
this.
welcome the
Um,
welcome to Picture This was for the audience, but also
oh
to
oh
you. So it was like
oh. All right,
for the
cool.
first time listeners, if you guys want to 10 years from now when we're a big success and you're going back through these episodes and you decide let's listen to it chronologically. This is going to be the first one you start with. So like we have already established a rhythm and like a groove and how to do our show, but you guys might all out there be like, "Oh, let's check out this show. Oh, let's go with the first Oscars." And then they're like, "Who are these guys? Why do they have an established thing? Why aren't they, they don't seem very amateurish." It's because we're not. This is year 4, baby. 3, baby. I don't know. Chad, how's it going?
It's going great. If you did decide to do this whole show as a silent film, I'm sure you would do a great job at that because you just kick ass on all the edits and everything that you do. These
Mm.
episodes are great. But no, I'm excited, man. This is 2024. This is like another year of doing this show, and we're doing the year of classics. So we're starting out, like you said, with the very first one, and it's very interesting to go
Mhm.
from doing all of these episodes with talkies, right? The whole time.
Mhm.
And now we're just doing silent films, basically. It's so weird, strange to be like, I'm not going to watch this random silent film from back in the day. I watch like 6 in a row or something like
Yeah.
that.
And it
And
really puts into perspective when you watch them back to back to back too,
yes.
just how, like, much you can do with it too. Because like, I feel like
Mhm.
every time I've, like, watched a silent film, it's like the first silent film I'll be watching in, like, 2 years, and I'll be like, "Wow, silent films are really neat." And then I watch now 6 in a row, like you've said, and I'm like, "Wait, no, like, there are reasons why some of these are the best of all time because they do things with this medium that evolve it." It's kinda like when you watch a musical for the first time, you're like, "That was neat." Then you watch, like, 6 musicals, and you're like, "Oh, you can do different things with the musical." I feel like
Yeah.
it's a very similar vibe.
It's interesting, like, if you watch a lot of them in a row and, there's so many more that we can watch, and fortunately, there's so many others that were lost, but the ones that we still
Mhm.
do have, you can actually, like, how you would go and you would talk about, like, the dialogue and the different like, this film has much better dialogue, it's written by Aaron Sorkin, and this film has crappier dialogue, and you can have a debate with that. You can do the same thing with all of the dialogue
Mhm.
cards and the choice of not using a dialogue card in this place and actually letting the actors just perform it. And you're like, I know exactly what they're saying right now, and I
Right.
don't even need a dialogue card.
Mhm. And that's a
Um,
testament to direction and acting to be able to
yeah,
understand what's going on without title cards. And then when there are movies with a lot of title cards, does that help or hurt it? And we'll talk about that
yeah,
in a sec because there's just so many different types of movies here. We're doing something interesting here because the original Oscars didn't really necessarily know what they were gonna do in terms of like how to structure it, how to format it, how to categorize it. There were actually 2 best picture categories, and I know now in retrospect they've kind of said like the outstanding picture is the best picture, but if they had one category, I feel like they might have included some of these other ones. And I think I'm glad we kind of watched both the best
mhm,
outstanding picture and the best unique and artistic picture because how is one movie unique and artistic and the other is just outstanding? Like, I think those
yeah,
are one and of the same. So it's really cool to watch 6 movies instead of just 3 because I'll be honest, some of my favorite movies came from the unique and artistic picture
mhm,
category. So we're going to talk about those. The outstanding picture category, though, the nominees are Seventh Heaven, The Racket, and Wings. Wings won the outstanding picture that night. And then the best unique and artistic picture, we have Chang, The Crowd, and Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. So those are the and Sunrise one. So those are the 2 categories. So we will be talking about each category, and then at the end we will rank each category. But then we will do one big compiling ranking of all 6 at the end, just because we do like to have one definitive winner of that year, and I think we can kind of come up with that. But yeah, this is really fun. I mean, this is our big year of classics. I'll show the graphic one more time because I worked a long time on it.
it's
But yeah,
beautiful.
thank you so much. Picture this year of classics, and as you see here, we've got some staples, but we've got some modern classics as well. We go all the way to the '80s here for the year of classics, just because classics has kind of taken on its own big term. Like we got silent films here, but then we're gonna have musicals and some that are in color, some that are still black and white, some classic romances, some of the most heated rivalries in Best Picture history. We're also gonna go all the way to '82 because of the modern classics classics and because of the significance that one of those films has on a certain 1-year-old to come soon. But it's going to be a really fun year, I think. There are 2 months where we will not do classics. For our retrospective, we will do 2014 because we're going to keep up with the retrospective. So we're going to do the 10 years later. And then obviously in 2 months, we will be doing 2024 nominees, which by the time you all are watching this, you know what those are. We don't, because we're recording this before those happen. So like it's a weird Inception thing. But the other 10 months of the year are going to be just classics. Nothing later than 1982. And honestly, aside from 1982, probably not much later than like 60. Like we're really trying to hone in on the 30s, 40s, 50s, because those are the movies, those are the years, the decades that we're kind of lacking in. Even though we're going to get eventually to all of them, we figured, you know what, we've been really 90s heavy, really 2000s heavy. We've done some 80s. Let's like go back and like really iron these out, because some might say it's a chore, and I thought it might be a chore before we did it, but now that we've done it, I'm really happy we did, because these weren't a chore for me. I really enjoyed these. Cool. Any
Yeah.
other grand remarks on this whole classics thing? Silent film?
Yeah. Well, I mean, specifically for this year, like when you announced the films we were watching, I actually thought we were probably just going to do the 3, and then you had the brilliant idea of doing the 6. And at first I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Hopefully we can find them and stuff. They're all like in the public domain now, so they're very easy to find. Most of
Some
them are
as
on
soon as
YouTube.
some as soon as like a few weeks ago, like literally in December,
Yeah.
when we were looking for some of these movies for January, there was one that we're like, I don't think we're gonna find this one. And then magically I went on to search it one night, and there were 7 versions of it, because anyone can put it up, anyone can do it. And the thing with the silent era that's so cool is that they perform these usually to live. I mean, in a big movie palace, they would have live scores going on. There'd be like someone with an organ actually playing the music, because that's how it was. There wasn't any sound in movies. It was like you usually had a pianist or something accompanying it. But nowadays, those scores are kind of lost. So it's also cool to see how like other distributors like Tubi has their music they put with it, and then some YouTubers put their music. Wings, because it won the big one, Paramount has kind of redistributed it, so there's like a definitive score and soundtrack for that in terms of sound effects and stuff. But most of these movies are also kind of not incomplete, but depending on what version you may watch, it may be a whole different experience, because anyone can do anything with them now that they're public domain, which is a good thing. And also a little tough sometimes if you're trying to get on the same page of watching something with someone like we are. But I think it'll add to some fun discussion, because we all watch these films in different ways now, which is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you can probably go to some big library like the Library of Congress and view the original if you need to,
Right.
or maybe try to find a DVD of it somewhere if
Mhm.
they have those available. But no, I'm ultimately glad that we did this, because it just like really put a lot of these films into perspective. And because like you said, the other half of it we wouldn't have watched, because generally when you look at the slate of all the winners in the past history, something like Sunrise doesn't normally come up. It's usually just Wings.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah.
And obviously, I would have eventually gotten to Sunrise on the Sight and Sound podcast I
Mhm.
do, but it's number 11, so it's going to be a long time till I get there. So
And
it's really cool that we're going to get to talk about it right now. Yeah.
I totally agree, and that's actually really interesting, because when we'll talk about Sunrise soon, but when you said something about Sight and Sound, I had to look to see which one of the films was actually on there, because I wasn't sure. I thought maybe it was Wings, because that was the one that actually won,
Mhm.
Best Picture that we know as at today. But I'll say I was happy to see Sunrise on there
Okay,
without
cool.
giving too much away.
Yeah, we're not giving too much away. Yeah, there are good films this slate, but there are, because of just the nature of the show, there are maybe some bad ones. We'll talk about them though, and I think that's going to be really fun to talk about. But let's talk first. Let's set the scene. I mean, obviously, 94 years ago, neither of us were alive. Our grandparents probably weren't even alive.
Nope.
So it's really interesting to like kind of go all the way back here and talk about what was going on. Chad, what was going on at this time?
Well, my grandparents were close. I believe, I think at least one of them was like 33, so
Hmm.
is close. But yeah, what I did, because we did 1930, and I think I just did that year. But this time, since it was the slash, I did the history for both years.
Cool. Yeah.
Just to try to get a good foundation of where we're going, because I think
Mhm.
some of these were came out in 27 and 28. So
Yeah, I believe honestly, I think only one of them is 28. I think Wings is 27, The Racket is 28. That's the one that's 28. Seventh Heaven is 27, Sunrise is 27, Chang is 27, The Crowd is
yeah,
28. So The Crowd and The Racket are the ones that are 28.
yeah, it gets a little confusing, so that's why I'm glad we do it the
Yeah.
way we do it now. So the history. The first transatlantic telephone call is made via radio from New York to London.
Wow.
The Harlem Globetrotters play their first ever road game.
Wow.
I'm trying to do my best David Lynch here.
Right, right. I
The
was about to
Academy,
say, I think those transatlantic calls were also like at the time like $75, which at the time was a lot of money. Like I think it was like a buttload because that was like such an unheard of concept. But I think they were like rich people got to do those. Like you wouldn't see anyone, just common folk making transatlantic calls or whatever.
right?
That's pretty cool.
Yep. Uh, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is created. Werner Heisenberg formulates his famous uncertainty principle. The silent romantic comedy film It is released, popularizing the term It Girl, not the It Clown, the It Girl. Pan American World Airways is founded. An
Wow.
image of Herbert Hoover is transmitted via Bell Telephone Company, which is the first demonstration of what we call television. Charles
Wow.
Lindbergh flies solo from New York City to Paris, which had never been done before. The Food, Drug, and Insecticide Administration, the FDIA, which would later be called the FDA, is established. The Columbia Phonographic Broadcast System, aka CBS, is formed. A treaty signed by the League of Nations Slavery Commission abolishes all forms of slavery. The carving of Mount Rushmore begins. The jazz singer comes out and popularizes talkies. The Murderers Row team from the New York Yankees sweeps in the World Series. The Japanese government cracks down on socialists and communists. Publication of the original Oxford English Dictionary is completed. The animated short Plain Crazy features the first appearances of Mickey and Minnie Mouse in a non-distributed film. Amelia Earhart becomes the first woman to make a successful transatlantic flight. Alexander Fleming rediscovers the antibiotic penicillin by accident. I don't know what rediscovers means, but he did it. An iron lung respirator is used for the first time. Steamboat Willie, now in the public domain, was released and was the first fully sound cartoon to be generally distributed. And the United States Congress approves the construction of the Hoover Dam.
Nice. A lot of history, a lot of like mind-blowing things to think about. Like, wow. Just all those things you're rattling off of like, geez, that was a long time ago, people. You couldn't fly from New York to Paris. That is what we're talking about right now. So very cool. I mean, the big one obviously being the jazz singer is the most important in terms of what we talk about because that is the ushering in of talkie films. I mean, that is kind of the beginning and end of an era, the end of this era. So I think it's really cool that like this Oscars was basically started and they were still able to award these films because if the Oscars had started just a year or two later, we would have probably never seen a silent film until the artist nominated. So very interesting, but also, kind of sad in a way. I mean, Singing in the Rain is a great depiction of like the kind of joyfulness of like, oh, we're moving on to a new era, and the fun of it. But then Babylon's very much the sadness of it, and because a lot of people lost their jobs because they couldn't, translate to the new way of making movies. So I mean, there's an up and a downside to it, but I'm glad we still have these films. I'm glad so many are in the public domain, so we can still access them. Famously, two films that came out very early on in the Oscar stretch have been lost to time, and one of them was found in 2016, and we're going to talk about it today. So that's really exciting. I mean, I grew up for most of my life thinking that there were two Best Picture nominees lost to time, and we're talking about one of them now. So who's to say that the other one won't show up someday? But yeah, that's kind of wild to think about how just crazy time has changed everything.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any notable births, deaths, albums of the 20s
Oh,
or
yeah.
20s?
Not albums, but we'll get
Yeah.
there. I have some births first and one death, one very famous death. Births. Eartha Kitt, Sidney Poitier, who I believe we've awarded awards. Pope Benedict the 16th, Robert Shaw, love him. Peter Falk, love her. Rosemary Harris,
Mm-hmm.
of Spider-Man fame.
Still
Uh,
kicking it.
yeah, she is like 90 something years old. George C. Scott,
Wow.
Steve Ditko, Andy Williams, Fred Rogers, Shirley Temple, Rosemary Clooney. I think she's like George Clooney's aunt or something.
Hmm.
Or grandma? Can't be aunt. That'd be too old.
Probably
I don't
no, yeah, probably grandma.
know. Joe Jackson, Stanley Kubrick,
Wow.
Andy Warhol, Jimmy Dean, Dick York, Roddy McDowell, Adam West, Batman, Ellie Weasel, who wrote that book Night, the Holocaust book,
Yeah.
Noam Chomsky, Philip K. Dick, Blade Runner, and Bo Diddley.
Hmm.
And the one death, Lizzie Borden.
Ah, okay. Wait,
Yeah.
Lizzie Borden. How do I not know that name? Do I
Lizzie
know that name?
Borden, she is the one that allegedly killed her parents.
I don't know if
And
I've heard of this.
there's like a famous axe murder case, and
Oh.
I can't remember exactly where it is. I think maybe either New York or Massachusetts. And I think it was like Massachusetts, and I remember the house was on sale at one point, and Gary and I were jokingly like, "Should we buy the Lizzie Borden house?" It's
Okay.
totally haunted, I bet.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. And you said you had no albums, though, right?
No albums, but I do have recordings. So I just looked
Oh,
at
okay.
yeah, so I looked at both years and I found the 10 most popular or top 10 recordings of songs from each. So My Blue Heaven by Gene Austin, Two Black Crows Part 1 and 2, The Early Bird Catches the Worm by Moran and Mack, and A Little Spanish Town by Paul Whiteman and his orchestra. Charmaine by Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians. Some of These Days by Sophie Tucker with Ted Lewis and his band. Me and My Shadow by Whispering Jack Smith. Ain't She Sweet by Ben Burney and his Hotel Roosevelt Orchestra. Russian Lullaby by Roger Wolf Kahn and his orchestra. Ida Sweet as Apple Cider by Red Nichols and his Five Pennies. Tonight You Belong to Me by Gene Austin. That's 1927. And then 1928, we have Sunny Boy by Al Jolson, Blue Yodel number one, T for Texas by Jimmy Rogers, Ramona by Gene Austin, My Angel by Paul Whiteman and his orchestra, Janine, I Dream of Lilac Time by Gene Austin, Among My Souvenirs by Paul Whiteman and his orchestra, the Rhythm Boys. I guess that's like featuring the Rhythm Boys. Ramona by Paul Whiteman and his orchestra. There's a Rainbow Round My Shoulder by Al Jolson. Together by Paul Whiteman and his orchestra, the Rhythm Boys. Laugh Clown Laugh by Fred Waring's Pennsylvanians.
There you go. So if you're a fan of those songs, now you know where they came from and when they came from. The first Academy Awards. This is going to be very fun to talk about, considering how just different it was in general. It was a meeting of 270 people. That's it. Just gathered in a room at the where was it held? It doesn't say here. Maybe it says here. Yes, it does.
California.
The Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. Good guess, Chad. Hollywood, Los Angeles. Tickets were $5, which in 2022 terms is $85. Which, if I could pay $85 to go to the Oscars, sign me up. I would go.
Yeah.
270 people, and Chad, guess how long the Academy Awards was? The ceremony.
95 minutes.
15 minutes.
Whoa.
15 minutes is how long it was.
They just like read it from a list real quick.
So actually, I just read this. They actually announced the winners three months in advance. This was where they handed out the trophies. So they knew who won. So the winners showed up. They got their trophies. They said thank you. Maybe made a little speech and went about their day. Imagine if they did that today. That'd be crazy. Probably no bits, no jokes. Douglas Fairbanks, the president of the Academy, was the one making the official presentation. So he probably just got up there and was like, and here is Janet Gaynor, and here is this, and here is that. 12 awards were presented, which is also why it was so short. There were only 12 awards instead of 23, as we know today. 20 additional certificates of honorable mention were given to each of the runners-up in the categories, the main categories. Obviously, Wings won the first Best Picture. Janet Gaynor, first and only actress to win for 3 films. Back then, they kind of awarded a body of work rather than a single individual performance. So she won for 3 different movies, 2 of them which we'll talk about today. The Academy Statuette was designed by MGM's art director Cedric Gibbons in 1928, and then sculptor George Stanley was paid $500 to execute the original statue from the design. So $500 for that first Oscar trophy. Again, I would probably pay that money for that first Oscar trophy. That is, in inflation, I don't know what that is. But in 1927, the average cost of a movie ticket was 25 cents. Just worth noting. Just had to say that. With AMC A-List, it's only $20 a month, which, if you see enough movies, could be about 25 cents, maybe. I don't know math. Yeah, Charlie Chaplin won a special award just for acting, writing, directing, and circus. And then there was also a special award, obviously, given to the jazz singer for pioneering the sound thing. So this Academy took place in 29, so it was like 1929 awarding films from the past 2 years. So it would be like if this Oscar ceremony we were awarding like Coda and Power of the Dog, those movies. It's been that long, which is a little weird to think about, just given how much time has passed. But that is the awards. I think we should get right into it since there are 6 nominees to talk about. Is there anything else?
Notable films, real quick.
Oh, that's right. Why did I forget notable films? I'm off my game today. I'm sorry.
It's not a long list.
Yeah, there are other notable films that didn't make the cut. I'm so sorry about that, Chad. Take it away.
Yeah, there's actually some pretty big ones here. So we have, I guess it's a version of Chicago, maybe even before it was a musical. Not even sure. The Jazz Singer we've mentioned. The Great Metropolis, one of the early sci-fi. Napoleon, which we got another one this year. So there you go. Or last year, I should say. The Ring, which is an early Hitchcock film. Robinson Crusoe. Uncle Tom's Cabin. The Black Pearl. I'm sure that influenced Pirates of the Caribbean somehow. The Fall of the House of Usher, which we got a mini series from Mike Flanagan last year of that. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which was before the Marilyn Monroe one. The Haunted House, The Man Who Laughs, another Moulin Rouge, which we covered one of those on this show. Noah's Ark by I think it's Michael Curtiz. No, wait, that's way too early, isn't it? No, he could have done it that early. Yeah.
I mean, Casablanca was only 14 years after it.
True. We already mentioned Steamboat Willie, Sweeney Todd, a version of that. The Telltale Heart, Edgar Allan Poe. We mentioned It, with the It girl, and then also maybe one that people would argue because it's in the Criterion could have been on here. Or maybe I didn't even check if it was in international, if they even had the international award then. The Passion of Joan of Arc.
Yes, which is obviously one of the most notable films of all time. Yeah, I didn't think I didn't even write down any old films because I'm like, I haven't seen anything from those years, and then I'm hearing all these titles. I'm like, I haven't seen a lot of those, but I've heard of them clearly. I mean, Metropolis and Joan of Arc being 2 of the biggest ones. Was Nosferatu also this year? Or that was before? That was before,
I think that might have been before Nosferatu.
Oh, that was 1922. Yeah, so that was way before. I was just curious. Because that was another big silent film, and then obviously all the Chaplin stuff before this. So silent film was still a big and robust art form. People still love it today and talk about it today. But this is the last wave of them. I was setting up the segue earlier. I guess I'll continue the segue. I was going to say there's 6 movies. If only there were 7, so I can make an easy segue to Seventh Heaven. But there's no easy segues when you forget a whole branch of the setup for the show. So Bad Dylan, Tisk Tisk. I'm not going to heaven today. I'm not going to hell either. I'm just not going anywhere. I'm just staying right here in my chair to listen to Chad tell us about Seventh Heaven.
Seventh Heaven, directed by Frank Borzaghi. Written by Harry H. Caldwell, Catherine Hilliker, and Bernard Voorhouse. Cinematography by Ernest Palmer and Joseph A. Valentine. Starring Janet Gaynor, Charles Farrell, Ben Bard, Albert Gran, David Butler, Marie Mosquini, and Gladys Brockwell. Synopsis. I tried with these synopsises. Let's see if they work. A man and a woman dream of better lives. The man helps the woman get out of trouble. They fall in love before the man is drafted into war. Based on Seventh Heaven by Austin Strong.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, a lot of these premises for these films are so basic, and I don't want to say
Yeah.
basic because they obviously have some depth to them, but like they're very simple premises, and I think that's what makes some of them
Mhm.
very charming is because you can just rely on interactions and characters and chemistry and comedy, and you don't necessarily have to like tell a convoluted plot because the more convoluted or the more complex you are with your plot, the more title cards you have to write, the more you have to try to convey without words, and back then you needed to try to convey without words as best you could. So I don't blame him for having a fairly simple premise, even though it does go in some pretty experimental, I want to say, directions at the end. I mean, it definitely gets there. But what did you think of this one, Chad? Seventh Heaven. Was this the first one you watched in the long line of them, or did you go in a different order?
Nope, this was the first one. Yeah, I this time I don't normally do what you normally do and watch them up in alphabetical order, but this time I did
Hmm.
because I just didn't know like another like a better way. Because like normally I'll do it based on like what I'm in the mood for,
Hmm.
kind of deal, or
Yeah.
what I'm the most excited to watch. And this time I
Right.
was like, let's just do it in order.
Yeah, and that way you also get to end on the 2 big best pictures, that's a fun one.
True.
What I did is I actually went category by category only because I wanted to, like, watch them all within the same gaze of, like, "Okay, this was up against each other, and then, like, this was up against each other." So I still
Mm.
went alphabetically, but by category, which we're gonna cover by category. But this one was obviously for outstanding picture, which was up against The Racket and Wings, so, that's just something to keep in mind when talking about it. But, what do you think of this one since this was, like, your introduction to these movies? Not
Yeah,
silent film, obviously, but, like, this slate.
I liked it. I'm not sure if I love this one. It's one where I liked that it was like 2 people that were kind of down on their luck. They both wanted better things. One was a sewer worker, and he
Mhm.
wanted just to be a street. He didn't even want that much. He just wanted to be a street sweeper. And
Simple joys.
just like, bro, I just want to have fresh air upstairs. And then she was I think a prostitute or a
Yeah.
sex worker,
Mhm.
but they would have called them prostitutes, I'm sure, back then. Um, and her sister was very, very harsh and
Yeah.
mean to her. And they were gonna get like a better life apparently, but then screwed it up by being dirty women or something like that, as the rich snobs would have said. Like, you guys are not like us, kind of a deal.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so because of this, these two end up meeting, and they're there out of like obligation because he's trying to help her not be in trouble, and then now he's worried that he's going to get in trouble and lose
Mhm.
his job, and they end up falling in love and stuff, which I liked a lot of that. I like
Yeah.
the acting between the two
Mhm.
when they're going to fall in love and stuff, but when he's like called into war, um, and stuff, and then like it just goes into this whole thing. I liked when he's called into war, and then she's worried, and they're like, at this time we're gonna, like look at the stars together and like talk to each other if
Yeah.
we can't
Very
hear each
cheesy.
other.
Yeah.
It is
Very, like,
very
over the
cheesy,
top, yeah,
but
melodramatic.
I kind of like that from like a romantic
Oh,
perspective.
yeah.
But then, the other thing is, it just kind of goes into this thing where I thought he was going to actually die, and then she was going to kind of use this as a anti-war kind of thing, or like the war's over, but I had something and I lost it, and then he just comes back, and then I'm just like, I just don't know about the ending there.
Well, yeah, like, let's talk about the ending. I know you talked about all the whole thing, so I wanna comment on some stuff
All
you
right.
talked before, but no, 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 it's great. I mean, I wanted to hear your thoughts, and you gave us your thoughts. But the ending specifically, I actually thought this is where I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like, I was really into it because of the ending, because I don't think it's as clear cut as I mean, maybe it might have been
It
because of
might
the
be
time.
ghostly.
That was what I was getting a little bit,
Okay.
only because, like, I don't know, it was so sudden that, like, and they made a big deal about his death, and I took it as almost like a metaphor that, like, even apart, because our love is so strong, I know you'll come back to me one way or another, whether it be in
Oh,
death or
that's
life.
sweet.
And I really like that. I don't know. I was
Yeah.
kind of digging that aspect of it. If you take it literally, though, it's sweet because of that, because it's like your love healed you. If you take it not literally, it's like, oh, like it's almost like a tragedy, but like we still have the memory of one another and the times we shared. But I like how it is a little ambiguous. Or maybe it's not ambiguous, but I made it ambiguous with my overanalyzation. But I kind of like that ending for that reason. I get the war sentiment, and I think it does a good enough job of showing that war is harsh. But I think,
Mhm.
we watched All Quiet on the Western Front for this, and I think after watching that, made around a similar time, it's hard to take any anti-war film on the
Yeah.
same caliber as that. But I thought it did a good enough job explaining why war was harsh and war was tough. And I like how love was the thing that kind of like connected them and pushed them through it. So I did like that element of it. Yeah, I think it's a little bit more interpretative, but maybe it's not, and I'm just overanalyzing. But I think if you
Well,
look at it, yeah, that way it might be. I don't know. I
well,
dug
I
it.
do kind of like. I'm not saying I hated the ending.
No, I
I
know, I know.
just wasn't sure about it.
It is
But
very. It's weird. It's a little jarring at first. It kind of takes it back. You're like, wait, what's going on? Is he alive? He's alive now? What's going on? Like, it is a little disorientating for sure.
yeah, I do kind of like your perspective, because I could see getting that vibe actually because of how it unfolds and stuff. But then I was thinking like it is almost like hard because I was rewatching back that scene recently, with the war and stuff, and then I was like, it's even harder to enjoy the war stuff here, and we'll get there when I've seen Wings. So
Right.
it's one of those.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
the other thing too is there is a whole like theme of religion in throughout this movie as well.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning, I wrote down one of the lines. It's that's why I'm an atheist. God owes me 10 francs. And so it's like he starts as like an atheist, and then like at the end, he's like, I've seen God now, and like I guess like God brought me to you, and or maybe
Mhm.
love is seeing God or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I get that too. Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, because I don't know if it's quite religious or if it's like love is my religion now. I'm not sure, but I think just to call the character an atheist from the beginning and to have her being a prostitute at the beginning, I think that's like a cool like it's honestly ahead of its time. Like this was pre-code, so like it's cool that you're getting this kind of representation. Whereas like I feel
Yeah,
like things decades later would be a lot more polished. But you're right, like the religious angle is very interesting, especially because it's like called Seventh Heaven. I mean, the fact that they go up like seven staircases, there's like the little bits and pieces that I think you can like kind of dig into deeper maybe on a rewatch, or like I want to dig deeper too, just because like there is probably a lot of like religious metaphor and stuff that I just didn't really pick up on. I did want to talk really quick though about the inciting incident that you mentioned earlier, because when I had seen this film, I texted you. I was like, "Oh my god, it's just like that new Sydney Sweeney movie in theaters right
yeah,
now." Because the way that was before I saw that movie, and that movie's a little different. It's a Shakespeare adaptation. That movie of Much Ado About Nothing, so like it's a little different. But the trailers made it seem like, oh, let's pretend to be together on this date to get our families off our back, and then obviously by pretending to be into each other, they end up loving each other. Film plays out a lot differently than that in terms of its inciting incident. But I did like just that inciting incident of, oh, we're not really into each other. We're just doing this to save each other, almost out of necessity. And then they grow to love each other. Kind of like another Will Gluck film. He just did Anyone But You, but he also did Friends with Benefits. Same thing. It's like, no, we're just doing this for fun. Like we don't have any feelings attached, and then they grow feelings. I mean, I just love that trope, and I think with a lot of these films, when you watch them now in 2024, it's like, oh, we've seen these tropes time and time again, but back then, you didn't see these tropes time and time again. So this could have been very much one of the very first of its kind of the whole like we don't really like each other. We're just kind of doing this out of necessity to lovers, like friends turned lovers, or more like acquaintances turned lovers, which is something you see a lot in movies and TV and media nowadays and literature. But I think back then was a little bit more revolutionary, which is kind of cool, because their love does feel natural. It feels like it progresses at a normal pace to where there's obviously a connection between them, but it's not romantic. And I like how it becomes romantic. To then it becomes so romantic that they can't live without one another, which is, I think, pretty cool. So the idea of that kind of not enemies to lovers, but we're not in love. We're just here out of necessity to them becoming lovers, and it gives them this extra added depth rather than just, oh, I saw you on the street and I'm in love with you. Let's get married. It's very much more complex in that way, which I appreciated.
yeah. I mean, in that way, like I don't know if this was the very first idea of it.
Maybe
Maybe it was
not, but
written before, but
and this is
like
based on a book, I believe. So maybe the book also obviously thought of the idea first. But
Oh, was it? I actually didn't write that down. If it was, oh yeah, based on Seventh Heaven. You're right. So yeah, the book and the movie are at least popularizations of this trope that would end up being like a long running like romantic comedy trope. Like you've seen, like you said, there's a movie this year that had it. So that's very very cool. And I feel like there's a lot of movies like you watch slates like these, and you're gonna see like so many establishments. Like one movie we'll talk about is kind of like in the slate is maybe one of the first like mob movies, and then there's another movie that we covered not too long ago, The Big House. That's like one of the first prison movies. So
right.
I'm excited to talk about movies like that.
Hmm.
I do want to throw out an honorable mention to the I think rest in peace Car Eloise from Seventh Heaven.
Oh
Uh,
yes,
yeah, okay, you're right.
I remember.
I was
Yes,
wondering.
Eloise, pour one out. Yeah, I want to say also just these two actors, their chemistry is just so good. And I made a
Yeah,
note of this. I looked. Janet Gaynor and Charles Farrell went on to star in 12 movies together, and this was the first.
I did
So
hear that as well. Yeah,
I think it's also one of those things where when you have just scene partners who work well so well together. I mean, Janet Gaynor, we'll talk about her more later, but like she's just so effortlessly charming that she doesn't have to do a lot of work. But I think
yeah,
for a character that's kind of taboo, prostitute, this thing, she's much softer and much more innocent than that type of character would probably normally be stereotyped as, which I really
yeah,
appreciated. So to see them kind of come together, it's really really sweet. I mean, I wrote it's quite easy to see why the duo went on to star in 12 movies together. Dialogue gets sappy, but ultimately, what this melodrama has to say about love and connection, the way certain hardships blind us, and how our greatest connections can allow us to see again. A metaphor that is so uncannily on the nose, but I almost applaud them for being so shamelessly overt. Are all elements and themes that shine through in the execution. So that's what I wrote
what
about.
is that? What you wrote?
Yeah,
Wow, that sounds professional as hell. Good job.
no, sorry. I'd spent a lot of time. So my New Year's resolution was to post letterbox reviews after I watched them instead of holding off because I went like a whole month behind during the end of the year. Last year was really rough for me personally with stuff going on in the family. So like I just fell so far behind with letterbox reviews to where the time I was writing the reviews, I was like, what happened to this movie? Like I was almost forgetting. So now I'm like trying to actually get on it. So I wrote this right
Yeah,
after I watched it. So it was all kind of
hmm,
fresh.
yeah.
I wanted to bring up two quick things really quick. And I think this is fun when you talked about how like the first prison movie with the big house and the first this, the first that. I think it's fun to see also what some of these films inspired in terms of like modern parallels because there's some films where we can very clearly see like, oh, this is a film nowadays kind of reminds me of this. There are two films that are specifically inspired by this film. The first being Moulin Rouge, the Baz Luhrmann version. He said all the rooftop stuff with Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman, like that whole set
Oh,
decoration, is inspired by his like outer window.
yeah,
Like when
I
he steps out
totally
onto
see that.
he said they designed it like in inspiration for Seventh Heaven. And the other thing, which was a little bit harder to kind of dissect, only because it's not as overt, is Damien Chazelle for La La Land said he inspired his ending, where they go through the montage of what might have been. They or
Ooh.
like the whole like ending sequence of like, oh,
Mm,
if she was with him versus she lived on this happy life, this whole like what if. He said was based on the ending of this because he also kind of interpreted it in a way where it was like maybe he didn't come home for more, but this was what she imagined it as, like as this like like she knew in her heart that in her mind he was okay, and she didn't want to admit it to herself or whatever. Kind of like how at the end it's like, yes, it's clear that Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, sorry to spoil this movie that's old at this point, so I'm going to spoil it, but like they don't end up together at the end, but like there's that kind of wink and nod at one another, and then you kind of have that dream sequence of like what life would have been like if they had stayed together, and then it kind of cuts to the reality. This film doesn't cut to the reality; it doesn't make it clear if it is real or fiction. But Damien Chazelle said that he saw this film and it really inspired him to write the ending of La La Land the way he did. So that's really cool. So it's really cool to see influences of these types of films in movies that are decades later, some that we will and have talked about on the show, like Moulin Rouge and like La La Land. So
yeah.
I just wanted to note that because that's pretty cool.
I love those two things that you just brought up. And that's actually another really good way to interpret it. Like that was in her mind.
Yeah.
And she was imagining that. I really like that. And the last thing I wanted to bring up was I do really like the idea of like two characters who like their whole motto is, yeah, we've been beaten down, but I always look up. Don't, even if I'm dying, just let the love of my life know that, you know, I died looking up. And one of the lines I believe I wrote down was, "I work in the sewer, but I live near the stars." So
Oh, yeah, it's so sappy
beautiful.
and melodramatic, but I kind of love it because in silent film you don't have words, so you really need to be almost over expressive, which is why a lot of the times the silent actors didn't translate well to talkies because all of their actions were very broad, their eyes were very big, and every reaction was very big, and it was hard to translate it. Like very few actors, like Greta Garbo was a great example of someone who made the leap, but some don't, and I think it's because it's always so heightened to where I kind of appreciate the almost melodramatic. Everything's a little over the top, a little schmaltzy, because I feel like at the time that's how you were able to convey emotion. Because you can't have like an Aaron Sorkin film where like Jesse Eisenberg is kind of talking like this, and this is how Jesse Eisenberg talks on The Social Network. This doesn't translate in silent film when you're just going, you need to make your faces go like this. And now Jesse Eisenberg in The Social Network, Aaron Sorkin 1927 would be like this. Oh, Andrew Garfield. You know, like that's the kind of thing you need. Like, no, just because that's the best example of it. Because like there's some
Yeah.
amazing line deliveries. You don't get line deliveries in the 20s. So it's very interesting to see how like this dialogue was conveyed. And yeah, it's a little sappy, a little over the top, but I like it. I mean, that whole line about the stars, I'm going to use it on someone someday because it's such a romantic line. Why not?
Totally.
Slip it into a card with some flowers and chocolates. Call it a day. Happy Valentine's Day, people. Anything else on Seventh Heaven, Chad?
No, it's cute. I liked it.
It is cute. And the Academy thought it was very cute because it was nominated for the most of the night for 5 nominees,
Woo!
and it tied for the most wins of the night with 3. It won Best Directing Dramatic. Back then they separated dramatic and comedy, and they did that 1 year and then stopped. So this is also a first and last. But it won Best Directing for Dramatic for Frank Borzage. It won Best Actress for Janet
That's
Gaynor, who won for 3 different films, obviously, but this is one of the 3 she won for. Best Writing Adaptation, and then it was also nominated for Outstanding Picture and Art Direction. So there you go. With only 200 people at that Oscar ceremony, there probably wasn't too much noise, right? It was probably nice and cordial. There wasn't too much racket. No.
Oh, you're going that way. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, no. So we're starting with Outstanding Picture, and next up is the racket. Sorry.
You're right. You're right. I was like,
We're over
wait,
2 on
you
segues, but it's okay.
skipped some. Okay.
No, I know. Yeah, I'm
The
going.
racket.
I want to start with this category and then that category, just so we can kind of look at them all as one category. If that's okay.
Totally works. That totally
All right,
works.
cool. All right.
The
So what's
racket.
all that racket over here? It's Chad telling us what this movie's about.
The Racket, directed by Louis Milestone, written by Bartlett Cormack, Tom Miranda, and Harry Ben. Cinematography by Tony Gaudio. Starring Thomas Megan, Louis Woolheim, Marie Prevost, G. Pat Collins, Henry Sedley, George E. Stone, Sam DeGrasse, and Lee Moran. Synopsis: James McQuigg attempts to take down the criminal underworld, starting with Nick Scarzy, a bootlegging kingpin in the heart of Prohibition, based on the 1927 play The Racket by Bartlett Cormack.
There you go. So this one is kind of the one I alluded to earlier. Until I turned 18 years old, for my whole first 18 years of life, when I looked at the books about the Oscars, there were 2 movies that never existed that were lost to time. One was called, I think, like The Patriot or something like that. The other was this one, The Racket, which was lost to time. People were like, "Damn, The Racket doesn't exist. It's gone." Then, after Howard Hughes died, which I think he died a long time before 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, he died in 1976. But they found his film collection after his death in like an archive or something. They were just going through Howard Hughes's film collection, and they found this film in 2016, just through his film collection. And the cat is enthralled by the story. But yeah, this film was lost to time for how I can't do the math. 80 years after, 79 years after its inception, I think. Right? Is that the math? Is that 2016? I don't know. But it's kind of crazy. Like if we had done this show a decade ago, we don't talk about this film. We have to be like, this film sounds neat, but we would have never checked it out. But because they just stumbled upon it in Howard Hughes of all people's archives, like That's like the most nutso story ever. So where
Yeah.
I was like really hyped up to see this film because I was like, oh my god, the world. A lot of people haven't ever seen this film because people probably who died before 2016 never got to see this film. Like this is like kind of a new film, like it was gone for the test of time, and it's relatively new. It's only been around for 8 years, really, which is
Yeah.
just so wild. Like that story alone just really intrigued me to it. But what did you think of this film itself, beyond just the whole idea of it being lost and found?
Well, I didn't know that watching that, so you just enlightened me on that.
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought this was an interesting one. It took me a little bit to actually get into it, but then I like a lot of these films. You when you're watching them, you really have to go back to like looking at it in the context of this is like such an early like film like we were talking about like our grandparents weren't even born when this so it's like so early that it's establishing things and you just got to look at it like this is one of the first times this has probably ever happened. Like this is like one of the first mob movies. It might have been perfected with the Godfather, but this was one of the first ones. And I like that it's about prohibition because it was made during prohibition, so it's not faking it. It was actually prohibited then or whatever. So if people are drinking in it, I'm
Mhm.
sure they were drinking water. Well, I think they always drink not alcohol when they film, anyways. But I don't know. Maybe they don't. Maybe if you're,
I
if
don't
you're
know.
going full method, maybe you don't.
As someone who's just on a film set, it was a lot of cola. It wasn't water. There was water, but we did not drink actual alcohol.
Yeah,
So I don't know, but who
that's
knows? The
true.
20s, it probably got a little rowdy. I don't know. Yeah, you said something that was you hit the nail on the head earlier about the idea of the title cards and how some movies didn't have them but didn't need them.
Mm,
The thing with this being an adaptation of a play, and
yeah,
plays, as we know, is it's a play. It's very wordy. There are so many title cards in this
there are.
thing to
Yeah,
where and I know some people are going to be like, but Dylan, you love subtitles more than anyone else. I do, but subtitles are on the screen. The
yeah,
action is happening with the subtitle. Here, it's action, read a little bit, action, read a little bit, and for me, that just kept chopping it up to where it was almost a little tiring. And this one is not the longest movie. I don't think it's only it's only 84 minutes, but it felt the longest because it was just so much dialogue where and
yeah,
I haven't seen enough silent film to be like, oh, this is a very wordy silent film because there are probably silent films that also have a lot of title cards, but comparatively to like the other five, this one had the most description and the most dialogue, and it was
yeah,
a lot of like fast-paced dialogue too. Like there was action happening on screen, but they had to keep stopping for the dialogue, and that took me out of it personally to where I was like, oh,
yeah,
like I wish it had just kind of played out at times. But I get it. You're adapting it from a play. At that point, you don't know what a talkie film really is, or it's just introduced as a concept to where you couldn't even fathom filming this with actual dialogue. You have to have the cards. So I don't blame them for it. Obviously, it's the resources they had, but when there's so much of it happening side by side rather than subtitles, which happen on top of it, I
mhm,
almost want to re-edit this film
yeah,
and put subtitles on so you can read it as it's happening, because I feel like that just broke it up a little too much for me personally. But some of the jokes are funny though. It is charming and it's fun and it's cool to just see what a 1920s silent film mob movie is. But I just think that is like the one thing that like really set it back for me.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I definitely get that criticism. I definitely felt that as well. Because you will have long stretches when you have the kappas talking to the mob doing they're the ones doing the racket and they're trying to catch them for doing their racket. And so you'll have like long scenes where they're talking about trying to get this guy to confess and stuff like that. So you will have a big back and forth, and it's even in Seventh Heaven when I was first watching it, I was like, you know what, this movie's 2 hours long, but I bet 1 hour of it is title cards,
Yeah.
because each title card takes about like 5 seconds on screen, maybe a little less, but like if you add them up, like 5 seconds, like if you do that math, it might be like at least 30 minutes of the movie is reading, which is it's just if you see that as a flaw of silent films, and just in general, then that it is what it is. It's just how they had to do it because there's no other way to do it unless they had figured out how to do like subtitles then like on screen
Mm,
while they were, but that's just not how they
right.
did it back then.
No.
But yeah, if you compare something like Seventh Heaven, which seems like very even on how it did its title cards, like it just didn't seem so much at once, then the Racket at times will feel kind of like that. But then there's other times where it is just action, like there's a car chase going on, which
Mhm.
I feel like was really cool, especially
Yeah.
for like an early film like that. And then one of the scenes that I really liked was there's in the restaurant at the dinner, there's this like stare down scene and someone ends up
Yes.
getting shot.
Mhm.
And that took kind of a long time, but I really like that because it was instead of just a bunch of dialogue to read, it was just action and no talking, and that was really
Yeah.
cool.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think the movie's at its best when it shows, not tells, which, I've always been a proponent to, like, if you have a great writer and a great script, show it off. But with these silent films, it's really all about show, don't tell for me. And that's the one thing that held it back. But it is fun. And I just think I'm grateful that we can see it. I'm grateful they found it. And I think just film preservation is so important to where I'm like, I have to appreciate the film for that respect. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I don't know. This was just kind of like one of those ones where I kind of forgot about it as quickly as I watched it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't know. I thought this might be one of the ones that you really like because you're
Mm,
usually like really into like mob films and stuff like
true.
that. So like seeing it as like an early one, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I totally get your big criticism of it, and it can really slow down the film. So like the big pacing issue for you,
Mhm.
that I totally understand, and I felt that too. Like I said, a couple notes that I wrote down is that it's curse words seem to be censored in the titles with just
Yeah.
like a line.
Hmm.
I think that's kind of like how they did it. It was like it's just a curse word, they
Right.
would censor it out a little bit.
Hmm.
And there was a quote that I had to write down because in 1927 it means something entirely different from what it means today.
Okay.
And it just said, and because they banged my old man. I was like, they did what to your old man? So I think they
Probably
meant
like
like
banged him on the head, like like banged him up.
beat him up or
Because
put him
like
in
when I get
jail.
it,
I don't
like when I
know.
was a
Yeah.
kid and I would roller skate with my dad. I could probably still
Banged
do
your
it now,
elbow.
but I haven't. Yeah, like no, like there was a bad fall we took once. And then we got home and my dad was like, "Yeah, me and Dylan are pretty banged up." Like I've heard that
Yeah.
phrase.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's like what they meant, or maybe hey, pre-code, man. Maybe they banged the old man. I don't know. Maybe that's what the racket was. Maybe they
And,
used the racket. Maybe they got a little kinky. I don't know.
and there was an actual old man, which I liked. I liked that it was like Nick Scarsi's not the head. He's got to call the old man. And then he called the old
Yeah.
man, and the guy's got like a little switch to call like, the president or the governor or something like that. And then I'm just like, that's kind of cool. It's kind of like a faceless old man,
Mhm.
like a Bond villain almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a really cool, I think, early mob film. With some issues, but I mean, I liked the. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to note is that it's basically like the big mob guy versus the big cop who's trying to get him, and it really reminded me. I don't think you've seen this movie, but Michael Mann's Heat.
No, not yet. Yeah,
Where
I
it's
got
like a big, because it kind of focuses on both of them a little bit until they have to
you. Right.
go head to head. And that was a really cool thing. So I don't know if Michael Mann was inspired by this. Probably not.
Maybe.
It
You know
was
what?
lost to time.
I don't. Yeah, probably not. Yeah, because no. Yeah, he didn't have this as a resource for Heat,
Right.
unless. Yeah, no. There's no way he could have seen it. Yeah, because they didn't discover it till 2016. I don't know when it went into hiding. Like when it got
Yeah.
disappeared, probably around the same time. I mean, a lot of these films were made and then quickly forgotten. I don't know. But now it's here. Now it's ours, and now we can watch it whenever we want. That racket. Weird distinction because there were only 12 categories, so a lot of these films were only nominated for like an Oscar. So The Racket nominated for Outstanding Picture, and that's it. It was over one. Pretty weird distinction. You don't see a lot of films just being nominated for Best Picture without any other awards to come along for the package. But hey, that's how it works. You know what, Chad? I know we're a few months past the holidays, but I just wanted to let you know you're my Clarence. You're my Clarence. You show me what a wonderful life is. I'm Jimmy Stewart, and you are my Clarence. And I hope you, Chad, just by gratification of making me see that life is valuable, have earned your wings.
Wow, that's elaborate. All right, Wings.
That's all I could pull. How do you get from the Racket to Wings? I don't know.
I I don't know, but I liked it.
I thought
Uh,
about wings and I was like, I could either go buffalo wings or I could go like angel wings. So I could have gone plain wings, which is the actual wings we're talking about. But I don't know. I figured I'd.
Chad, I'm hungry. I want to order some wings. Wings. I mean, Chad, tell me about Wings. Wings, directed
See,
by William A. Wellman. I don't know. Yours was better.
no, you got. See, no, you got it. You got it. Take a
Written
bow or a Clara bow, if you will.
Directed by William A. Wellman. Written by Julian Johnson, Hope Loring, and Louis D. Lighton. Cinematography by, I like this name, Harry Perry. Music by
Yes.
J.S. Zemeckis. Starring Clara Bow, Charles Buddy Rogers, Richard Arlen, Jobina Ralston, L. Brennell, Richard Tucker, Gary Cooper, and another great name, Gunboat Smith. Synopsis.
Gunboatsmith.
Synopsis. Two small town rivals go to war, become friends, and there's also love involved.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I love the scene when they're playing volleyball and the what's it called? The One Republic song's playing, and then Tom Cruise runs really fast. I'm kidding. No, I mean like immediately when you watch this film, you have to think about Top Gun because it's the silent film Top Gun. It's homoeroticism, it's airplanes, it's dog fights, it's I mean, I was just there. That's all there really is. That's similar, but I was just so like, oh my god, this is Top Gun, and Clara Bow is the I guess she would be the Jennifer Connelly, maybe if Jennifer Connelly liked Tom Cruise and Tom Cruise was like, nah, I like this other girl. I don't know. There's a lot going on in Wings. It's a long one, but
They do
I
find each other at the end, apparently.
yeah,
So.
I was trying to get to the Top Gun comparisons. I don't know. I just thought so many times I was like, Top Gun could never. Just kidding. Top Gun could, and it's very good. But yeah, this is like the first ever like big like plane dogfight movie. Like
Yeah.
obviously we've
Dogfight.
already
That's another way it's, related. And they want to be pilots. So yeah, it's
right.
totally Top Gun. You're
Exactly.
right.
So yeah, what did you think of this one? I mean, this is the first ever like best picture. Like this is it. This is the one we all think about when we think about the first ever Oscars.
Yeah. It was very exciting to see.
Hmm.
And I will say, I mean, it's a lot more war than Top Gun is, but
True.
I definitely do still see a lot of the influences. I'm sure whoever wrote Top Gun probably was thinking of like all the things that came before it that uh, were big pilots, and I really like this one. I can
Mhm.
totally see why this one won. Just looking at the rest of them, save for maybe one, just seeing like the sheer like production of this, I'm just like,
Yeah.
holy shit, this is a
Gorgeous.
movie. Like
Yeah.
it has, dialogue, title cards, and all that stuff. Sometimes, but there's just so much action going on. This is really cool because they had like the synchronized sound, so it wasn't a
Yes.
talkie. There was no
Mhm.
talking like dialogue, but it did have sound effects like the
Yeah.
cars starting in the
And
planes.
yeah, back when they used to put these on, as I said, they would have like live accompaniment and they would have like sound effects and stuff. It wouldn't be part of like the projection or anything. It would be on its own little thing if the theater allowed for it. But in the years since, Paramount, because this won Best Picture, I think Paramount was like, let's get our hands on it. Let's put out a really good version of it. And that's where we get this really great soundscape. And I love the sound design and the score in this thing. Like it
Yeah,
really does make it feel very cinematic in a way that it wouldn't if it was just like kind of just the generic kind of backing music that like Tubi uses. But like I really did enjoy this because of the spectacle and just the way it
yeah.
just looked so ahead of its time. I mean, there's shots in this thing, like the tracking shot when they're in Paris and they're all sitting at the tables. How did they
Yes.
do that? Like I'm
I had
genuinely
the
like
same
sitting there.
thought.
Yeah, I'm like, how did they do, like, we
over
would
the
know how you
table.
would do it today, but, like, in
Yeah.
1927, how did you run a truck over the tables? Did you say, "Run, get out of the way," after the camera
I
had
thought
passed
maybe
everyone?
like
That
it was suspended with something
maybe, I don't know, like,
and
it's
they
one of
just like
those shots where
pulled
it's
it.
like, I do not know how they pulled it off, and a lot of the plane sequences are the same way. I'm like, "How did you get
Yeah,
all that great aerial footage, and why does it look so good today too?" Because it's all a little bit more sepia tone than the other
yeah,
films. It's not black and white, it's more sepia tone, but I don't know, something about it just holds up so well, and maybe it's because it won Best
yeah,
Picture, so it's been really well preserved. But just the shots, even if it wasn't good preservation, the shots themselves, the angles, and the actual camera movement is just way ahead of its time. Like this is we're talking like 60s, 70s. Like this is ahead of its time by decades.
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I just think like just like comparing that to a lot of other movies that were coming out that we watched for this, I'm just like it's just like so different. If you I don't know like if the our audience like does watch along and stuff like that, but if you do go through these, you'll see such a stark difference between from like Seventh Heaven and the Racket to Wings. Be
Yeah,
like Wings is just like so epic and just great. I really liked other aspects of the movie though. I liked
yeah.
the relationship between shoot, what is it, David and the other guy, John,
Jack.
Jack.
David
uh
and Jack, and then Mary is the friend from home, and then
yeah,
Sylvia is the other
Sylvia,
girl that they're both into. It's like
yeah,
a love quadrilateral,
yes,
quadrilateral. I can't say that word.
love square,
Quadrilateral. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know,
Wow. I'm you never.
quadrilateral.
There you
um
go.
Yeah, no, because it like starts out as a rivalry. They're like going to war. It is kind of like Maverick and Iceman, and
So
but
Maverick.
at the end, like you'll be my wingman,
Yeah.
and
Except these two actually do kiss. Like they kiss. I'm
that
I'm I'm gonna say right now they
I
kiss.
I love that scene. The
There was
scene at
some
the
lip to lip
end.
action.
I actually don't know if they actually like kissed on the lips. I thought it was like more of like kissing forehead and stuff like that. But even if they did, I think that's fine. I
Yeah, no,
actually
it is. It's great.
I'm actually really surprised going back to the 20s. I thought that would have been more of a macho time where you're like you can't, like
Show
kind of
affection.
like how Top Gun is, where it's super macho and like you can't, yeah, you can't show affection from man to man. That's ridiculous. But they were like all on top of each other, hugging each other, and like I love you. And like one was kind of responsible for the other's, injuries. And so it's like, I love to see that in film, that whole relationship like develop and stuff like that. Yeah, I thought that was great.
Yeah. Yeah, just the way it shows male friendships is really great because
Yeah,
this could have just been solely very base level love triangle. Both guys like the same girl. He doesn't get the girl, so he goes home to the other girl who he realized loved him all along. And that is what it takes on this film and a broader lens. But that central relationship between the two guys is what I think makes the movie because you can still have all that other stuff with the girls, but that relationship and friendship that grows is what makes this special and elevates it above something more modern where it would just kind of be like these enemies who don't really make up but kind of have an understanding for one another. Here they have a genuine friendship. They are bonded quickly, and it makes the stakes of the movie that much greater as it goes along, as it goes further, as it wraps up at the end, you know?
yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think that's kind of like what it is with, the relationships, the scope of it all, is really great. I don't know if it has like the best overall story
Yeah.
that we've seen, but I think it's like kind of like the beginnings of trying to, make movies like this. So maybe ultimately like a complex story was like tertiary, is like not the focus of
Yeah.
it, but
And that's
um,
fine because if it succeeds in all the other areas, it doesn't necessarily need it. And that's the thing is like you
yeah,
still get emotional responses from the action, from the love story. I mean, that last scene is so sappy, but it's so sweet. Just the way she's like, you know what happens when a shooting star passes? It's like, it's kind of like the seventh heaven thing with the stars. You like roll your eyes, you're like, but it suckers you in. It
yeah,
does. because it doesn't need to try to be anything as complex as it wants to be. It could just be what it is, and by being what it is and nailing it, it ends up being complex. You know?
Yeah. The other thing that I really liked about this one is it's very funny.
Yeah.
Like, it's a because I feel like, like, look, we just got through watching last year all the new All Quiet on the Western Front. We've seen a lot of movies that are like that. It's like, no, war is devastating. It's terrible, and it is. I love anti-war movies. Those are like my favorite kinds of war movies. But sometimes you can have fun. When you alongside like a very harrowing type of story as well. And I just like a lot of the comedy from Clara Bow
Hmm.
and El Brynel had a lot of like comedy stuff in there, and I really appreciated that from this one. So like
Hmm.
really enjoyed watching Wings, and I wasn't sure I was going to because I'm like, it's an old war
It's
film.
very long too. Like it's what,
Yeah,
2.5 hours? Yeah. So it's a time commitment.
but like, yeah, I really didn't feel the length of it because I really
Hmm.
enjoyed watching it. I mean, and then I was messaging you like during it, like talking about the bubbles, and
The
I'm like, this is
bubbles.
freaking weird. Like, there's
Yeah.
some weird shit in the movie, and
Hmm.
I'm like, we were talking about how like that was probably very ahead of its time, and I was so aware of that. And when I was calling the bubbles weird, it wasn't a bad thing. I was like,
No,
I'm
they're
enjoying
weird.
the quirkiness of this movie,
Yeah.
and it's just a guy being drunk and like, ooh, bubbles, and it's just like touching stuff and bubbles are coming from it.
Yeah.
The fuck?
Yeah.
Oh, and this goes against everything that I thought about old movies. Is that I'm like, well, they're all squeaky clean and innocent and everything. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you see nudity in this movie when
Yeah.
she's
No,
undressing.
that
I'm
was
like,
a
whoa,
yeah, when I read something, where is it? Notable scenes, yeah, it's the first widely released film to show nudity ever.
wow,
Like that itself. And that might have been why the Academy
noticeable.
was like, we need an award for this cuz like this is real life. Men kissing men, nudity, like this is real. This isn't your mama's I don't know.
It's very tame.
Yeah, no, it's
If
very very
if that's
very
it's
tame.
it's very quick, all that stuff. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
it
A
was
boom.
surprising.
Yeah, I read this too. A boom was built with the camera mounted on as an extension to shoot the Cafe de Paris scene. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Because
the first
you
technique
can
of
do like
that.
a little overhang kind of a
Yeah,
deal and just hang
yeah.
the camera. Yeah.
This is the first time intoxication was displayed genuinely. Wait, in the scene in which Rogers becomes
Wow.
drunk, the intoxication displayed on screen was genuine. So he actually got drunk. As although
Yes.
22 years of age, he had never tasted liquor before and quickly became inebriated from drinking champagne. So
Yeah.
this actor, the first time ever, drank on
Method,
set and got drunk.
baby.
And then it says here during the death scene, Jack is plainly observed kissing him on the left cheek near the left corner of his mouth, which led to interpretations of the film depicting cinema's first LGBT male kiss. So even if it's overt or not, it looks enough like it to be considered. So like this is groundbreaking. This is a groundbreaking film for so many
Yeah.
reasons. To where like I don't even think the story was all that great, but I was just into it because I like the characters, I liked
Yeah.
the action, I liked the way it was shot, presented, I liked the humor, I liked the relationships. Like I thought this ticked all the boxes.
I agree. Yeah. It's one of those where, yeah, like I didn't care that like it didn't have like a full-fledged story that you could grasp onto, because there's so many other things like you said you could grasp onto. Like a lot of the characters are funny, like I named some of them. The relationships were really cool. I liked the whole side story of the clingy girlfriend going to war as an ambulance driver to, I don't know, like try to get him to like her more, or just to see what he was up to.
Yeah, that's the Clara Bow character you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Mary.
because I think the whole time is she's friend zoned. So like the two guys are into the other
Yeah,
girl, but she's friend zoned. So I think she's just trying to get him. I think she just misses him and loves him and trying to get him to love her. Period.
yeah.
But then she sees he's in with other girls, and then she gets caught up in other stuff. And then the nudity scene happens where they're he's drunk and passed out in bed, and yeah,
She
it's a lot.
basically gets kind of like Janet Jackson, where
Yeah,
like she shows nudity, and then they come into the room and they're like, "You can't do that," and then they try to send her home from that. It was
Yeah,
weird,
weird, weird.
but I did like how she like she was dressed in her like work uniform, and then she like
Mhm.
put on a dress, and then she tried to like combat the other lady and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff in it.
Nice.
Um, oh, and I really really liked the whole part with David and his mother and the
Mhm.
little bear, and just like the
Yes.
memories of home and how special that was to him, and just people talking about like what's what is your like inception totem, the thing that grounds you to
Mhm.
home, kind of a deal. And to for him it was that little bear, and I thought that was so sweet. I feel like if I did go to war, I'd have to have some sort of like a blankie or something like that, was like reminded me of home, kind of a deal.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's got a lot in it that is worth praising. Is it the best picture winner ever? I mean, no, but I think it is for its time, just very revolutionary and very deserving.
yeah.
Um, it was only nominated for 2 awards, but it won them both. It was nominated for Best Outstanding Picture and won that. It was nominated for Best Engineering Effects, which I guess is visual effects, which it obviously won for those revolutionary effects. Do you want to move on now to Unique and Artistic Picture, or do you want to rank these first and then move on?
I'm fine to rank this slate, and then we can do the
Okay.
rest
So
after
let's
that.
let's rank these 3. So the outstanding picture, these 3 films, Chad, I think we might have the same ranking, maybe not. But what is your number 3?
I don't actually think we do.
Okay.
You know what? I'm flipping it. I'm
No, you
flipping
don't
it.
have to. Let's stick to your guns,
No,
Chad.
no, I'm flipping it.
All right.
I'm gonna have no, because you convinced me about the
Okay.
paycheck. I'm gonna have the racket at 3.
Okay. Then the Racket is my 3. Your 2 is
Seventh Heaven
my 2 is also Seventh Heaven, and our number ones is the Wings. Okay.
wins.
So
I
yeah,
predicted what you were gonna do, and
yeah,
then I was like, you know what? I think you're right though. That's why
yeah.
I was confused because I knew Wings was at the top.
Mhm.
And then after our discussion of Seventh Heaven, I was like, you know what? I think it is better than the racket, even if I like them both.
Yeah. So that's outstanding picture. Obviously, that's not our picture this winter. We only get one, so we got to talk about the other 3 first. But let's go to the jungle, Chad. Let's segue into the jungle of Thailand, and
Yeah,
let's try to survive the drama of the wilderness. I don't know why they've abbreviated this title because I think the full title is so much cooler.
yeah, it
Let's talk
is.
about Chang, a drama of the wilderness. I don't know. It's such an epic
Yeah,
title for such a
it
crap
is.
movie. Anyway, continue. Sorry,
There you go. There
I
you go.
showed my hand. My hand is here. I showed it.
Chang, A Drama of the Wilderness, directed by Marion C. Cooper and Ernest B. Shodsack. Written by Ahmed Abdullah. Cinematography by Ernest B. Shodsack. Music by Hugo Reisenfeld. Starring, and these are, I guess, just the real names of the people:
Yeah,
Cry, Chantui, and Na.
yeah, yeah.
Synopsis: a poor farmer in northern Thailand struggles for daily survival with his family and his friends, like monkeys.
Yeah.
Monkey friends.
So Clara Bow showed a little tit. Ernest showed sack. So every every time you said showed sack, I was like, I need to make a joke. What can I say? Which that's the last time I'll make a joke at Chang's expense because obviously it's a masterpiece. No, so Chang is the first and I think only documentary ever nominated for Best Picture, which is notable. Obviously, I mean
Yeah.
it's a historic thing. We don't see documentaries nominated a lot. The question is it a documentary or is it not? Obviously, it's nonfiction, but there is very clear evidence just through research that they did restage a lot to get the perfect shot at times,
Yeah.
which I would still say is documentary because they're not like writing a script and saying like
Right.
actors saying lines. They're capturing real life. But imagine you're a kid in the jungle with live animals, scary animals that could kill you, and they're like, "Can you like touch that tiger one more time for the shot?" Like that
Right.
to me is just such irresponsible filmmaking that I don't care how good it
Mhm.
looks because I mean the photography in this is great, whatever, it's well shot, but like I can't fathom. in my heart supporting a film that just like puts people in just dangerous scenarios just for the sake of art. Obviously, Tom Cruise does it all the time, but he's doing it on his own volition and
Yep.
he's making the decisions. No one's saying you have to jump off that bridge, Tom Cruise. Like he's deciding to do it for our entertainment. And you know what? I think he's a madman sometimes, but he's consented.
Oh yeah.
And there comes a question of, and this is the thing I couldn't find in research: did these people consent to this? Obviously, it's their real life; they live on the brink of danger. But the whole time, I was just like, "This is just so dangerous." And you have animals dying, which already makes me sad. But like, I get it's nature, but it's like, if I want to watch like real nature and like animals fighting it out in the food chain and all that, I'll watch Animal Planet or something. Like, I'll watch. There are programs like that, and they come with viewer discretion advised, at the beginning. But this film, it's like, oh, let me look at this sweet documentary about the Thailand jungles. And it's like, just all this stuff is happening. And I'm like, how did they get away with this? And I guess they got away with it
Yeah.
because of the time. But sorry, I've been rambling and rampaging like a stampeding elephant. Chad, why don't you tell us your thoughts on this? Because I don't know. Maybe you like this more. I don't know.
I love this.
Okay.
Love
So
this
there you
movie.
go.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
No,
you know
no.
what?
No,
You're a good
no,
actor, man. Because I
no,
believe
no.
you. I was like, you know what? There's sometimes those movies. You never know.
I'm pretty sure watching this, you probably figured that I wouldn't love a lot of the shit that
The
happens
fact
in
that
this
you skipped as
movie.
many scenes of Out of Africa and King Solomon's Mines as you did, I
Yeah.
kind of figured you would also not like this one.
So I didn't skip anything in here because it was just a lot of stuff going on at once.
Mhm,
And I think I did skip some of the tiger stuff. Because like you said, I didn't really think about it, but like now that I think about like putting people in harm's way for a shot, like you said, and then also not just that, but like animals, like it's like
mhm.
I know they're like tigers and they're predators and stuff like that, but and that sometimes people will have to kill predators in order to protect themselves, their other animals that they have, and their crops and just whatever they have to do. But it's not that doesn't mean that I want to see it, and that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that
There's a tasteful way to show that if you wanted to show that.
yeah, you could have like cut away and I'm even like, wondering if like they did some of that, like they actually killed animals just to make the movie. And I don't support that at all. I don't like that one bit. So I mean I did enjoy some of like it was cool to see how like people would survive and stuff, in a place like that, and like the things that they would do, and they legitimately have like their little babies in hammocks right alongside monkeys in hammocks, and it's just what an interesting way to live. So there's a way to make the movie that is just like
Mhm.
really interesting, but there's just too much, like you said, like real life, like harrowing stuff that could have been
Yeah.
done in, and it's like how much harm was or potential harm was done in the name of making a film. So I feel like just that stuff. It's I know like I gave the Alamo shit for the raccoon hat,
Mhm.
and maybe that was a little extra of me to do, but I think this one is like a lot more valid of
Oh,
a
yeah.
critique.
If they had shown John Wayne slaughtering the raccoon and skinning him, I would also have a big problem. And obviously
Yeah,
wearing it, I would not wear that, but like it was
right.
kind of like one of those things where I'm like, it's a folklore. Like, I mean, that's like his notable image thing. Like that's his thing.
Yeah,
Whatever. But here it's like, no, this is not, you know, this is
yeah.
way worse. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean, on one hand it was an interesting movie to see, and like you said, it like kind of bridges line between documentary and not. It's kind of cool. It was kind of cool to just to see people in that area. One thing that I found really funny
Mhm.
was there was the monkey that was being chased by I think a tiger or something, and they had like the footage of the monkey like cutting to the monkey's face, like oh shit. So I thought that was like a really funny editing thing that they did, and I was like, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, there's a way to make a movie like this good. I mean, like we see nature
Yeah,
documentaries all the time, and even nature documentaries that depict like lions eating antelope. Like it is the food chain, it is the way of life, and that's something
yeah,
that is inevitable. But it's also like if you see that happen, you capture it on film, whatever. But like it's the restaging of it in my mind that's really problematic because I'm
Yeah.
like, how much of this needed to actually go down? Did something happen where they're like, oh, we didn't get that on film. Do you think we can like sacrifice another like little monkey or whatever? Like, I don't know how far they went in like deciding what to show, what to capture,
Mhm.
what they wanted. Um, and honestly, I didn't find it all that interesting in terms of the subject matter either. Like I just wasn't
Yeah,
invested enough in the characters and the characters, the
I
people.
agree.
It's just I don't know. This was kind of like a nothing burger, but like in the worst sauce I've ever eaten on a burger. Like some burgers are like, it's a burger, whatever. It's not a great burger, but it's a burger. It's kind of nothing. But this one is like a burger doused in sauce that just makes me uncomfortable and sad. And yeah, I never
Yeah.
want to watch this again. But hey,
No,
can't all
I
be winners.
I agree with you. I mean, it's cool to see cute animals from time to time in it, but I can see cute animals elsewhere.
All right. So Chang, nominated for only one, and it loses it. It's best unique and artistic picture, which I guess documentary. It's unique. Like fine, whatever. There wasn't a documentary category at the time, so maybe that's why they included it. I don't know. It did not stand out amongst the crowd though. That was a really good one, right? You'll give me
Oh
that
yeah.
one. Okay,
Oh
1 point. I'm
yeah.
up. I'm 1 for 5 right now. So, Chad, tell us about the crowd.
The Crowd, directed by King Vidor. Vidor?
Wow, what a name!
Writ-
What a
Written
name!
by,
King.
written by he was the king. Written by Joseph Farnham. Eat your heart out, Elvis. Joseph Farnham, King Vidor, and John V.A. Weaver. Cinematography by Henry Sharp. Starring Eleanor Boardman, James Murray, Burt Roach. That's another cool name. Dell Henderson, Lucy Beaumont, and Freddie Burke Frederick. Synopsis: a man moves to the big city to make it big, but falls into the horrors of mediocrity and depression.
Yeah. What a depressing movie. I mean, I feel like the outstanding picture category, it has its dark moments, but it's mostly like kind of like these big Hollywood romp like you're going to feel good at the end at some capacity. But then some of these films are kind of dark and deep and morbid and effed up, but not in the way that the Chang movie is effed up, but like
Yeah.
genuinely, like this premise kind of shook me a lot. I left this being very just kind of reflective of a lot of things. Just the idea of the American dream as a whole, and the idea of the film being called The Crowd, and this kid who's like grows up, his father tells you like you're gonna be something big one day, and just kind of clinging on to that because back then you could just tell someone they're going to be a success and that's all
Mhm.
it takes for people. Like they don't work for it, they just assume everything's going to kind of be handed to them. But then when they experience hardship, they don't know what to do because they've never had to work for anything. And we see that very early on when this kid's father dies, and there's that gorgeous shot of him at the bottom of the stairs as he's walking slowly up the stairs, and the camera's kind of at an angle so it looks like he's walking toward the camera, because that's like the first time ever that he's had to like kind of see something that's not in the direct line of vision when it comes to his aspirations in life. And it's like everything's thrown for a loop, and then we see it consistently happen throughout the film when his daughter dies, and the way his daughter dies is obviously very tragic. But this idea of wanting to stand out from the crowd, but not being able to stand out from the crowd, but also not necessarily doing anything about it and just hoping success will come to you. And that's kind of the falsity of the American dream as a whole, is that, sometimes the American dream is a lot better in concept than it is in execution. And not everyone gets the same American dream. Not every American dream is the same for everyone. So a lot to think about, a lot to chew on here, which we'll get to in a sec. But what were your thoughts on the crowd, Chad?
I'm conflicted on this one, and I
Okay.
actually I was watching this, and sometimes I'm like, I just sit there and I think I'm like, is Dylan watching this at the same exact time I am? How does he feel about this right now? And I
Okay.
just try to like think about you watching things sometimes. I'm
Okay.
like, how
I'm
how do
flattered.
you feel about this? But no, I was like, I don't know if Dylan is gonna like this or not, but I'm very conflicted
Hmm.
because I do think the messaging is kind of cool. I don't know about like the execution totally. Like sometimes it feels very melodramatic in ways. Um, and then sometimes I'm like, do I even like these characters?
Hmm.
Am I supposed to? And it's like it's like the main guy, like you said, like he was kind of told by his dad, bigger and better things. You're gonna be great, kid. And then he dies, and then he goes to the city, but I don't feel like it really shows him like trying to like do the next big thing or do
Well,
anything big.
that's the whole thing though, is he thinks it's just gonna come to him and that he doesn't need to try.
Oh,
And then at the end, when he realizes he's lost everything, he's like, "Shit, the American dream isn't just gonna happen. You actually have to strive for it,
that's
and
right.
this was a lie I've been told my whole life." And I think that's so big, especially because this is 1928 when this came out, so this is after The Jazz Singer, and this is a film that came out, right after The Jazz Singer, and this was already when people were trying to be like, "All right, talkies are in, silent films kind of out," and it's kind of the sadness, and I feel like that's kind of encompassing of the whole narrative of the idea that everything's kind of
Yeah.
moving past you and you aren't necessarily standing out from the crowd anymore. It's kind of this weird meta nature of
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
this film itself being kind of a film of a bygone era, and this character feeling like, oh, everything's going to happen for me. Everything's great. My dad said so. And then nothing does. And he loses people and he doesn't know how to feel because he never thought he'd face that adversity. And then at the end, when he does still get the girl, it turns out, is it gonna last? Because then it pans out to all these couples, this whole crowd of people. I love this last shot where it pans out this whole crowd of people is
Yeah.
laughing and laughing, and it's like every single one of these people has something darker underneath, and the laughing is kind of like compensating for it, and it's kind of this sad, kind of morbid, tragic thing at the end because of that. I don't know. I spoiler alert, when you were thinking about whether or not Dill was liking this, Dill was loving this, because this is,
Wow.
I think, one of the more essential silent films in terms of what it has to say about also the silent film genre as a whole. Kind of what I said about like the whole fading and the changing of times, and you kind of get that sourness and bitterness from the tone of this movie, which I think was kind of bold because it's not the happy ending, and even though there is a happy ending, it has that underlying subtext of sadness, which I think is kind of, apropos for the time and the changing of the time and silent film itself kind of fading out.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't get all of that, but I did get some of that. On my watch. But yeah, I'd actually love to rewatch that from that lens,
Mhm.
like that full lens of, the depression tone, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like some of the characters, like with the guy when he's being a complete piece of shit to her,
Yeah.
like the woman uh that he falls in love with, and then he leaves, and then she decides to tell him that she's pregnant, and then at first I was like, wait, is she actually pregnant? And then she turns out she was, but he's like so mean to her up until the time that she actually reveals that, or to him, that she's pregnant. And then I'm like, and then he's like, oh, I'm actually gonna be really nice to you now, and I'm like, well, why should I like this guy when he's
Right.
like
Yeah.
being such a jerk
It's
for
because a good thing happened to him, so he's like, "Oh, this must be the American dream. Okay, everything's great." And then it's like, no, she dies by getting hit by a car, and it's like, oh shit, man, you thought you had it all good because you thought everything would just come to you, but it doesn't. Like that to me is what the movie's trying to say. Because this
okay,
character is a fuck. This character is not a good character. This character is like kind of a scumbag. But I think the whole thing is that
yeah,
he's consistently got this like idealistic kind of universalist idea of the American dream in his head, and that everything's going to come fine. He doesn't need to do anything about it. And then when things start unraveling, he realizes just how lost and how fast life is moving without him, in a way that the silent film era was getting lost by the talkies moving ahead of them. Um, I don't know. This film made me feel very small. I was like, wow, this is some very existential shit going on.
I
But
was
um,
I was actually wondering, I was like, how you specifically would feel about it, because
yeah,
you're also trying to make it big in the big city,
yeah,
in some ways. So,
yeah, and there's
um,
that idea of it, like you leave, like personally speaking, I'll go to an audition and it'll be like the best audition I've ever had, and then I walk out and there's 30 other people that look like me outside, and I'm like, oh, am I that
yeah,
unique? And that's kind of what this film is. It's kind of stark, and
the camera panned away
it's
from
the
you.
idea that they're in the tunnel of love and they're kissing, and then they rip it off and they're like, look, it's two people kissing, they're necking, and everyone's like, oh shit, okay, this wasn't a private moment. Everyone had their eyes on it, like just shit like that, where I was like, wow, yeah,
Yeah,
like this. It's a little overt what it's trying to say, but I was like, it's saying it to me. It's definitely
no,
scary. I mean, this has a shot that's kind of borrowed in the apartment. The idea of him sitting at the desk with all the desks around him, like that's
yeah,
straight
yep.
from. I mean, the apartment
I
takes it from
got
this. I
apartment
can't say it's
vibes.
straight from the
Yeah,
apartment, but it's that idea too, because that character, Jack Lemon's character in that, is kind of similar as well. Like he doesn't really go for it. He just kind of lets it kind of come to him and takes takes the punches, and just but the difference is that Jack Lemmon's character doesn't think he's gonna end up like successful. He's kind of accepted his life, whereas this character's kind of learning the harsh reality of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, well, first it's, his, like you said, he gets a success and then immediately gets, the short end of the stick right immediately after with his daughter getting hit by a car. And I took that like, because you were like on it with like the whole theme of the movie, and I wasn't like I wasn't there yet.
Mm.
So when I was watching that, I was kind of like, the fuck, like what, she just
Yeah,
get hit by a car for no reason, like
yeah.
this is ridiculous, like this, and it
Well,
was almost comedic to me
mhm.
how it was like, ha, 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 and they were like, ha, ha, ha,
Right, because they
right
have these
after.
gifts, and they're like, "Come get your gifts." He basically is like, "Run across the street and get your gifts, because this is what matters in the moment. The world is stopping
Yeah,
for you." But the whole thing is, the world doesn't stop. The car keeps driving, and that's what hits her, because the world doesn't stop for this guy as much as he wants it to.
interesting.
And then the first line afterwards in the next scene, when actually she's not even dead yet. She's in the bed. She's sick or whatever, and the guy goes, "The world." I wrote down this quote: "The world can't stop because your baby's sick," and that's like, wow, like that's
That's
like
true.
one of those ideas. It's like
I did
to
remember that
to the
line.
rest of the
Yeah.
world, the rest of the world doesn't care about you. Like,
Yeah.
and it's kind of sad. It's kind of stark. But this guy who's spent his whole life kind of idealizing this American dream is being told your baby's sick, but like the world doesn't stop for it, dude. We got to keep going with our lives. And it's like
Yeah.
that's the thing. Is like
It's a
the
very
world doesn't stop for this guy. It
nihilistic
keeps going, and he
movie.
doesn't. He doesn't understand it. Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I feel like I could write an essay about this, but like because there's so much
I
going on that's
think
like very complex and like that I still don't understand. Like I'm still grasping with because it is very
th-
uh, full. It's
this is
very full.
very interesting because I feel like there's been times in different episodes where I'm like so in tune with a movie, and maybe you weren't feeling it, and I'm like,
Mhm.
dude, listen to all this stuff that I got from this movie, and you were like, I didn't care for it all that, or you were like, yeah, I didn't watch it from that lens. So it's been times when I've been on that level,
Yeah,
and then now you're like, oh, I got a lot from this, and I'm like, oh, I didn't get that much at all.
yeah.
Maybe I need to
That's
rewatch
fine.
this from that lens, kind of a deal.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean,
Because
that's
yeah,
that's also tough because. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and then I got to the other part where I was mad at him in the beginning for what he was doing to her, and then I swapped because then it was him actually trying, and he was kind of like trying odd jobs and trying to figure it out. Um, and then he was like, you know what? Everyone has a vacuum. No one's gonna buy this, and just trying to keep doing something different until something works.
Yeah,
And
he's
maybe he'll
basically
catch an
waiting till he
actual
hits
break.
the lottery. Yeah, and then I think he does. Doesn't he hit the lottery? Right? Isn't that how he's able to like? I don't know. Something happens where he's able to get money, and then he's like, "All right, I don't have to work again. Life's great." And it's like, no, it's
That
not. You need to stop. Like, dude. Ugh.
But yeah, well, I don't remember that specific part, but I do think you're right on that. But then like her like brothers come, and then they're like, what a bum. And this person like, can't support you and stuff like, and then that whole theme of he's the man, it's his responsibility to take care of you and make sure that it's like no one's bothering to be like, well, what's she doing, how is she gonna help take
Right.
care of the thing. And it's like that's a very stark difference from like then to today, where I feel like today kind of a big we covered the father of the bride, where he was
Mm,
like, I'm going to interrogate this man you're going to marry to see what he does so he can support you. And I'm like, I don't know. So I got a little bit of that too. Like, I don't know. I
yeah,
watched it from a different level than you
that's fine.
did,
No, and it's not even different level, like because there's no level. There's no different. It's
or
just
different perspective.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no higher or lower level, and I think that's the thing is it's there's just so much in it, and I think that's the one criticism I might have is that there is a lot in it, and I think it's a lot with especially with silent film, and this is not a knock on silent film in general, but like the idea that you can't necessarily say it through words, and like it does have This honestly could have used maybe more title cards to just kind of get through to it, but I did appreciate it because I think the actors sell it well enough. And it does have its like, own little like "It's a Wonderful Life" moment at the end where he's like gonna jump off the bridge, and then this kid stops him, and he's like, "No, Dad, like I love you unconditionally," and that's how he looked up to his father. And I think it kind of brings it in that full circle thing of
Yeah.
he sees his kid, and he himself realizes he's like, I can't promise my kid the same thing my father promised me, or he's going to be set out for disappointment as well. I think it's less of a, oh, I'm going to stay and love my kids, as more of, I'm going to stay and make sure my kid grows up to be a better success than I was. And that's why he goes
Yeah.
home. And that's when his wife is leaving him, but he asks for that one last chance. And honestly, I'm surprised they went that route. I thought she was going to fully leave him, but I do like how there's at least that slight glimmer of hope that maybe he's come to realize what he needs to do to change his life. I don't know. And I almost want to see what a sequel to this would look like, but I don't really know. It's very
It's
striking, but yeah, very very complex. But I don't know.
it's very interesting. I'm glad that you got like so much out of it because I remember I was watching it and then I was like, am I gonna look and see that this has like a really harsh reviews? Because I'm really not getting that much out of it. Like I liked like parts of it, and I liked the theme of like not like the kind of the nihilistic view of like not standing out in the crowd and
Mhm.
you're just a little blip and a sea of blips and stuff. But then I looked and like some people were saying like this is one of the best films ever made or one of the best films of the silent era and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, how?
For your
You just
defense,
told me how.
for your defense, Variety did say, and I don't know how old this review is, but it said the film is a drab, actionless story of ungodly length and apparently tells nothing.
Mm.
But then
Oh,
on my defense, there's an interview with John Luc Godard, rest in peace, passed away recently.
ooh,
When he was asked in the '60s why more films weren't made about ordinary people, he responded, "The crowd has already been made, so why remake
yeah,
it?" So I kind of like that element of it too. Just the idea of like
yeah.
this is kind of the epitome of the you're just kind of a loser film because that really is what it is. It's about a loser who thinks he's going to get everything he wanted but doesn't because he doesn't try for it. And then when it's too late, he realizes what mistakes he made. He's just one of the crowd, not standing above it. And that's a sad realization, but I think it's an honest realization for a lot of people out there. Obviously, you and I, we took things into our own hands and put out the show, and I think we stand out above the crowd because of it. But there are people who are sitting back just like, you know what? They don't know yet what they want to do. They don't have that passion. They don't have that family that they're like, that the American dream is in the little successes. And I think that's the thing is he thinks it's all in the big successes and it's going to come naturally. But, which is why you have to enjoy the little things when they come and enjoy the simple joys of life. I don't know.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the
Well,
crowd?
yeah, I mean, I'm just, because I like the performances, and there's a lot that I did like about the movie, but it's one where I'm now interested to rewatch it from like everything that you got out of it because I do think there is a really good movie in there. I just hadn't found it when I watched it.
Yeah,
So,
that's fine.
yeah, great.
All right. Well, The Crowd is nominated for two, doesn't win any. It's up for Best Outstanding in Artistic Picture or Unique in Artistic Picture, and it's also The King, King Vidor, is nominated for Best Directing Dramatic. Just what a cool name, The King. We got The King and we got Shosak, two humans, a tale of two humans. Let's talk about A Song of Two Humans, though. Let's talk about Sunrise, which is unique because it's a silent film, so there's really no singing, but it is nonetheless a song of two humans. Tell us, Chad, about Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans.
Might not be any singing, but there's some dancing. Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, directed by F.W. Murnau, written by Carl Mayer, cinematography by Charles Rocher and Carl Struss, music by Hugo Reisenfeld, starring George O'Brien, Janet Gaynor, Margaret Livingston, Bodil Rosing, J. Farrell McDonald, Ralph Sipperly, Jane Winton, Arthur Houseman, and Eddie Boland. Synopsis: seduced by a city woman, a farmer is then coerced to murder his wife, but ends up rediscovering his love for her in the process. Based on The Excursion to Tilsit, 1917 story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this movie, it's on the Sight and Sound Top 100. It's number 11. It's on the AFI Top 100. It's like number 80 something. This is like a very well renowned film. It's a very popular one. It's very much heralded as like, if not the best silent film of all time, one of the best silent films of all time. So like this was the one where kind of like how you went into Wings, you were like, all right, this is the big one. We gotta watch it. This is kind of how I treated this. I was like, all right, this is it. This is the last one I was gonna watch. I don't know. I'm a little hesitant. And then it started, and I was like, I don't know if I like this. But then when I found out how dark the inciting incident was of like this seductress being like, you got to murder your wife, I'm like, whoa, this is like some Alfred Hitchcock double indemnity shit that I'm like, wow, okay. And then it totally surprises you and it says no, instead it's going to be about how he regrets it. It's like if Al
Mm.
Pacino took Fredo out of the boat and said, you know what, let's go get coffee. And like it's and then they ended up growing back into love with each other as brothers, obviously, in that sense. But like it's just so different than where you think it's going to go. And then at the end when they're all happy, they kill her off anyway. And it's like another surprise. But then when she's dead, turns out she's alive anyway. It surprises you. Like this movie keeps surprising you over and over and over again, which I just thought was just so refreshing because I was like, I just thought I knew where it was going, and it never went the way I thought it was going to go, and I like it for that. So, Chad,
Yeah.
what were your thoughts on Sunrise?
So I approached it a little bit from a different perspective because I didn't know its reputation, its
Mhm.
prestige.
Yeah.
I thought it was just another silent film that I had to watch. It was the one that won on that side, kind of a
Hmm.
deal, and it was the second to last one that I was watching because I watched it before Wings. But I started it, and having watched a lot of silent films before it, I immediately was like, okay, this one's different. Like, there's something
Hmm.
different about this one.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost hard to explain, but then not really because you hit on a lot of it where it's like it did have a lot of Alfred Hitchcock vibes. It had like we were talking about like the use of title cards and if it's used
Yeah. There's
sparingly or if it's
barely
used
any in this. Yeah.
yeah, but it's like if it's used sparingly, if it's used too much. But this one had different kind of title cards. Like they
Yeah.
were moving
Yeah,
and
the
like
title cards were the movie itself, like, it was art, and
yeah,
that's what I was talking about earlier, where I'm like, not all silent films are the same, because here, they made an effort to make the title cards mean something and
interesting.
evoke an
Yeah,
emotional effect, which I wish, like, the crowd had done that because or no, not the crowd, the Racket, because that was so many title cards. If they
yeah.
had done something like this, maybe I would've liked it more. Like, that was I forgot about those title cards. They're so cool, those title cards.
They could have had in the Racket, they could have had like the title card shooting at each other. There's so much they could have done. Um,
The title card just has his hand like this. Like
but yeah,
the title card's wearing a cute little bow tie and has smoking a cigar. Oh man,
um,
we're silly tonight. We're recording this
yeah,
past midnight, guys. Just so you're aware.
it is.
It's a
That's
late
right.
night podcast, but like I feel like Sunrise fits
Gotta
this like
wrap it up.
this late night slot though. No,
It
Sunrise feels
does.
it's about sunrise, but most of it feels like a dark kind of like you
Oh
watch this at
yeah,
the 11th hour type thing, like because
it's
it's eerie.
the sunrise is at the end,
Yeah,
but it
which
takes
is such
place
a cool
before all
ending too,
that.
because it's like, you've been waiting for it, you know it's
Yeah,
coming, and boom, and then she wakes up, and you're like, "Oh,
yeah.
sorry."
Um, yeah, from the get-go, I knew this was gonna be different, and I just really liked the Hitchcockian style of, you know, immediately this woman just comes and she's she's almost like the seduction of it's not like she's a woman in herself, but it could be seen as like she's the seduction of city life and something
Yeah,
different that the farmer's
exactly.
not used to. And she represents, change and like, and like you can see this as like kind of like a man or not even a man, a woman, anyone being tempted to cheat on their spouse or have an affair, being like everything's samey here, and I don't like the samey vibes of everything here, so I want something different, want something new and fresh and kind of sexy, and it happens to him. And then she's immediately like, you need to kill this woman. Has this like elaborate ruse with the boat and the reeds,
Mhm.
and then has like this weird like sequence where he like gets scared of the reeds,
Yeah.
for a second there, and I guess he's like contemplating like actually doing this.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
pre-traumatic stress disorder. It's like before it even
yeah.
happens, you're getting, like, the nervous nillies, you know?
And then, he goes into the boat and they have a whole thing too with the dog that jumps into the boat, and then they have
Yeah.
to carry the dog
Well, and
back.
that's where I got, like, kinda double indemnity-ish vibes, because that feels like a very Billy Wilder thing of, like, "Oh, he's gonna murder her, he's gonna murder her, but there's a dog there. Is the dog gonna, like, blow his cover in a way? Is the dog gonna" like, "Oh, this adds another element, like, what's gonna happen?" Because at that
Yeah.
moment, you obviously don't want him to murder her because it's also Janet Gaynor, so you're, like, just totally mesmerized, you don't want her to die, but you're also like, "He's the protagonist, so should I be rooting for him to get away with it? But there's this dog now, and, like, is this gonna totally blow his cover?" Like, I like how this film always has you kind of on its toes. Even when he doesn't go through with the murder, throughout their day, it takes her a while to warm back up to him because she's consistently in fear that he's gonna kill her again and or try to kill her. And I think there's also a fun element of that, of like her kind of having that unease through their daily, goings about until they finally reconcile and you see that love is real and he makes that apology. But there's a lot of that where it's like there's like you're always on the edge. You're always worried that like one little thing is gonna just unspiral everything. Why? What are you laughing about?
So, all right. So, when I was thinking about the rest of this movie, I thought about the bit when they're dancing and the woman's like dress keeps going down and the guy's got to like keep pulling up her straps on her dress. And it's this like great comedy bit that like I was just like couldn't stop laughing
Yeah.
at.
I mean, this movie has everything. It really does have everything. Yeah. It's just like
It's like
it has everything, but it still stays true to the core message, which is pretty much, I mean, the message is good. Like it's a very hopeful message about, not taking things for granted. Like if you have something special, hold on to it. Don't try to just jump to the
yeah.
next thing because it's new and it's flashy and you think you're being complacent. But it's also like allowed to be funny. It's allowed to be a little dark. It's allowed to have humor, which I also like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just kinda like Wings, it, like, blends the 2, like, war is dark, but you can find comedy in the war. Like, during
Mhm.
the boot camp or whatever, during the training, there's some silly shit
Mhm.
going on there. But yeah, I love that comedy bit, I love the dancing, I love just, like, the process of them or the way that they get their groove back, so to
Literally,
speak.
yeah. Mhm.
Um, and yeah, because they're dancing. And that bit with that man, and like at one point both straps go, or like she's about to jump up and down or something, and he has both fingers on the straps. I don't know. I love that
You're like,
comedy.
yeah,
It
you're
just
really into this bit. I love it.
I just love that bit
Yeah.
so much. I had to
Mhm.
rewind it and was like, Carrie, check this bit out. This is great.
Mhm. So, what
Kind
did
of a
you think
deal.
of the ending where so, like, obviously they reconcile, he says he's so sorry, she forgives him, and then they go out on another boat ride, and it's beautiful, and then that's where I thought the movie was gonna end, and I was like, "Oh, this is sweet. This is like a man learning from his mistakes, and it's over," but then I was like, "There's 20 minutes left. Hmm," and that's when they go for the whole, like, kind of back turn of she is gonna die, and they're gonna get in the storm and
Yeah.
catastrophe shipwreck, and that's where I think the movie really kind of earns its stripes in a way because it shows the idea of he wanted this and now he has it and he's so
Yeah.
distraught about it. It's like you didn't don't be careful what you wish for, and I think that is
Yeah.
so harrowing.
It's one of those things. No, you hit it right on the nose because it's one of those things where it's like, you could, if it didn't have that part to it and it just ended before that, or with the lovely boat ride home, and now they're reconciled, you could be like, that wasn't earned. Now it's earned because he actually is about to learn like a real lesson. Like you said, be careful what you wish for. She might actually be dead now, in
Mhm.
exactly the way you were going to kill her. And so now he gets to. I mean, doesn't he like chase the city woman away and try to kill her or something like that?
Yeah, yeah, he has a violent outburst, which I get. Like at the time, the men on women violence was a little overboard, but I do see the frustration, obviously, of like you literally tried to wreck my marriage apart, and it ended up going the same way you wanted it. Now, like you just want me to like be happy now. Yeah, it's a very quick 180 for him, but it makes sense given the context of what happened and
Oh
what he went
yeah,
through. And I think that's very
yeah.
interesting because it does feel earned. You're right. It didn't feel earned, and then after that last beat, it does.
And that whole part, definitely like him rejecting the city value or rejecting the temptation. You can almost say you could also make this like a religious allegory and say
Oh,
that she's
absolutely.
the devil with the temptation. He's
Mhm.
fighting back against that temptation and the devil. and she was the devil. So I don't look at it as like, necessarily like a man going to strike a woman or something like that.
Right.
But hey, it began with him almost murdering a woman. So,
Right. Yeah.
it's got
And
a lot of that in there.
yeah, and I think they do a good job of keeping her alive at the end. You could have ended it on a very sad note, but the fact that she does get to live, it's almost like he does get that second chance. Because for so much of the film, I'm like, she shouldn't forgive him. He tried to fucking kill her, but then
Hmm.
as soon as that ending happens, you're like, no, but I'm so glad they're together. And that's weird. It's hard for a movie to do that, to have you so against a character. And while I'm still on Janet Gaynor's side through and through, like more so than his, like I still came around on him, which I think is the
Oh
power of
yeah.
the movie and the direction. Um, I want to bring up this like meta thing that I kind of put together. It's kind of like what I thought about with The Crowd, but the idea of silent film turning into talkie films. Because a month after this was released, actually 3 weeks after this was released, you know what premiered in theaters? The Jazz Singer. This is the last silent film before The Jazz Singer, literally. And I think that's also
Wow.
why it's like one of the most acclaimed, because everyone was so raving about it. Everyone was like, this is the best thing ever. And then 3 weeks later, they found a new best thing ever. And it kind of it makes you kind of sad because this film never really took off. It did win the Oscar, obviously, because it's a smaller group of people voting. But in terms of popularity, this wasn't as popular because the Jazz Singer came out 3 weeks later. And I
Yeah.
kind of this is a weird parallel, but I kind of saw this seductress as talkie films, stealing the attention away from Janet Gaynor, who's the silent film. It's this sweet thing that we love and is so precious and amazing because the very next Oscars, those talkie films are pretty much heralded as some of the worst because that first like few years of talkie films, people were excited about talkies because they were talkies, but they weren't good movies because they didn't really figure it out yet. It wasn't until like All Quiet
Yeah.
on the Western Front where they kind of nailed it, but like it took a while for them to make a good talkie film. They were just making talkies to make talkies. And I think it's kind of that idea of the whole movie watching community immediately went, this is the new thing. We love it. Screw silent films. And it's almost like, no, like silent films are special and they should be given their due. Just because there's a new flashy thing ahead of you that's beautiful and kind of sexy, it's talking films. It's so new and fresh. And you've never seen anything like it. This is still an amazing film and shouldn't be overshadowed. And I think that's kind of what the film is. It's like this guy thinking that this new shiny object is what he has to, he has to kill off the old one. But no, it's like this one was there for him all along. And I feel like that's with silent films too, because it's sad because silent films didn't carry on past this. They kind of were drowned, essentially metaphorically. And I think there's kind of something kind of beautiful to be said about the meta narrative of that, of silent films and talkie films and the shift of the general perception of them to kind of mirror this movie in a way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm overreaching again.
No, no, I think you're actually hitting on something really great. Not necessarily the analogy that you painted. I think it's a very interesting one, but I think that's why Sight and Sound would put this movie so high on like one of the like as one of the greatest films ever made, not just of the silent era, but ever, is because it is kind of like a template that you can like a white canvas that you can apply anything to, as far as like you said, the new not necessarily being the better, and the old, not necessarily being the worst and something that you should kill. And maybe in your pursuit of the new, and you're ignoring the thing of the old, you're missing out on something that was great right in front of your eyes. And I feel like that's a message that we still get in a lot of movies, but Sunrise is one of the first ones to do it. And I think it did it in such a great, interesting way. Like I said, starting this movie from the very beginning, I was just like, this one's different. I can totally see something different about this
Hmm.
one. And this is one that I could actually, and I don't want to like say this to about like all the silent films that we watched, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend like Seventh Heaven, or a lot of these other ones, or the Racket, to other people. Definitely not Chang, but I would totally recommend Sunrise to someone. Like, look, if you're, I know you probably don't want to watch a lot of silent films, and I know you've probably only seen Metropolis or maybe some Charlie Chaplin films, which are all great, by the way. But definitely check out Sunrise, because I do think, unless you are a big film nerd who actually takes the time to watch stuff, I guess like us, right? Um,
Yeah.
to take the time to watch all these, it is one that you should recommend, because I just do think it's a very important movie.
Yeah. There's one last thing I want to bring up. There are two cinematographers for this, which is kind of rare, especially nowadays. Usually, you get a single cinematographer. There are two, and I was looking at some of the actual the ways they shot. Obviously, they don't have behind the scenes stuff, but like other cinematographers, modern cinematographers talking about it, they had these really cool dual shots, and we see that a lot in the earlier part of the film, where like you see the train coming one way, and then you also have another shot of the train overlaying it, and that's another thing like Wings, where it's like you see these shots, and you're like, this is so ahead of its time. Like I can't believe how some of these shots look, and you have those great dual shots. So I think just the dual cinematography also adds to it as well, because it makes it look more artistic. And I think what you said earlier about
Yeah.
when you started it, you're like, this just feels different. It's because I think of also the way it's shot, kind of like Wings. It's like it's just so ahead of its time in terms of the direction and the cinematography and the dual cinematography, that I think that also aids in making it kind of have a different quality to it. So
No, yeah, I totally agree. Like the way it shot was definitely incredible.
there you go.
Shit, man, such a good movie.
Yeah, it's like we've been talking for a while, but it's good discussion. Let's get into the rankings in just a sec, but I want to tell you first what it won. It won 3 out of 4 Oscars. It won Best Unique and Artistic Picture. Obviously, Janet Gaynor, she won for this and Seventh Heaven. It was like her dual win. It also was nominated for Best Cinematography for the dual cinematography, and it was nominated for Best Art Direction. Did not win. All right, Chad, let's rank these 3 now, and then we'll rank all 6. So Chad, I think we might have the same one at the bottom. Maybe not. I don't know. What is your number 3 here for these 3?
So we're just ranking the 3 now.
Just the 3
Yeah,
right
it
now.
was number 3 was Chang,
Okay, yeah, it's Chang. So we're probably gonna have the same one. What was your number 2?
The Crowd.
Yeah, 2 is The Crowd for me, and number 1, Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. So we will see now.
Oh,
We're gonna rank all 6, and we'll see which one comes out on top. We have our top 2 from each era, so it's probably gonna be Wings or Sunrise, but we'll see after we rank the 6 where it falls. Chad, what is your number 6 of this entire slate?
Chang.
My number 6 is Chang. What is your number 5?
Number 5 is The Racket.
Number 5 is The Racket for me as well. Maybe we're gonna keep this going. Let's see. What is your number 4?
It was different, but then having the conversation, I'm rethinking things. So I'm putting the Seventh Heaven at 4.
That is my number 4 as well. Okay, this is where we might differ a little bit. What's your number 3?
Number 3 is The Crowd.
Okay, my number 3 is Wings.
Okay.
What is your number 2?
Wings.
Okay, my number 2 is The Crowd, which means our number 1 is the same. You want to say it, Chad?
Sunrise.
Sunrise.
Sunrise, A
A
Song of Two
Song of Two
Humans.
Humans. There you go. So, all we switched really was The Crowd and Wings. That was it. We pretty much had the same ranking otherwise. So very, very much in line with one another. Very much simpatico today. But Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, will be our representative for the winner of the 1927-28 Oscars. Obviously, it's a little different because some people would say, why aren't you just considering the 3 that were originally? Well, if you want to consider that, then Wings was our favorite of those 3. So there you go. But
Yeah.
Sunrise is our favorite of the slate. So it's the picture this winner for 1927-28. Chad, we have to get into our acting categories now, and I have to start it off with actor here, which was a little difficult because I think there are some solid acting performances from the men. I think the women in this slate are just a little bit more memorable for me, but I'm ultimately going to go with an actor from my favorite film, which is Sunrise. I'm going to go George O'Brien. I think he kind of just shows kind of that turmoil and that kind of angst and anxiety of killing her, but then also kind of the forgiveness aspect of it. When he cries, I actually believe it. It's a little hammy, but it's hammy in the way you like a silent film to be. So I'm going to go with George O'Brien for Sunrise.
That's a great pick. I really
Thank
do
you, Chad.
love his performance in that. I'm gonna go, and I knew you weren't gonna pick this because it's like a bit kind of supporting performance. I'm
Okay.
actually gonna go with an actor from Wings, and it's
Okay.
El Brindle. So he is
Okay. Yeah.
he's a funny guy in the movie. So like I said, I really love the comedy in the movie. And so he's one of the guys like kind of like, shipping away with them to the
Hmm.
wing school or whatever. But he's hilarious. Like he he says something to like a superior officer who then like pushes him down almost like, I'm so America or something like that. And
Hmm.
then like when he gets pushed down, the superior officer realizes all he wanted to do was because he's taking off his shirt, all he wanted to do was just show him his tattoo that was an American flag, and he
Yes,
starts waving
that
his
guy. Okay,
arm,
yeah.
and the flag waves because it's on his
That's great.
arm, and
Yeah, that's awesome.
it's very silly. And then he's doing a lot of shit too in the boot camp like training sequence where he's like, there's one time where it's like, wipe those smiles off your face, and he does the whole, this
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
thing. I love that. And then he he gets called up to participate, and I guess they're like practice fighting or taking punches or something, because he starts getting punched and knocked down. And like this guy is like doing like such great like just like taking the punch and falling in like a funny way, and just like being kind of like goofy, but like not like a
Mhm.
joke. Like
Right.
he's like just a silly guy who's a soldier. And I don't know. I feel like when I think about silent film, I do think about like the physicality of actors. And so I think of like Charlie Keaton. I almost said
Buster Keaton,
Charlie
Charlie
Chaplin
Chaplin.
and Buster Keaton. I need to watch more Buster Keaton stuff.
I feel like
But
Charlie
yeah,
Keaton is the name of an actor, though, right? Isn't that the kid from Stranger
I don't
Things?
know.
Yeah,
I don't
Charlie
know.
Keaton is Jonathan in Stranger Things because I recognized that name when you
Interesting.
said it. I was like, that's so funny. Yeah, Charlie Heaton. Sorry, not Keaton. All right, I was thinking
Oh, yeah,
Charlie Heaton.
close. Close
Sorry,
to no
Charlie.
cigar.
I know you're
But
watching this.
yeah, I think about all of the, actors that are like, comedians and stuff like that. So L Brindle, while not as popular as those other guys, in Wings really, made my day when I was
Love
watching
the
the
pick.
movie. I was like,
I
that's
love the pick.
hilarious.
It's great. I
Thanks.
mean, that's like my Lee Fierro pick for Jaws. It's like she's in one scene, and this guy's in a lot more than just one scene, but it's like she just makes an impact, and I love that. All right, Chad, who's your best actress for this slate? Sorry, while you chug the water. I know I've made you talk for 2 hours now.
Well, I was coughing. Yeah. So best actress, this one is tough. I
Yeah.
think I know who you're gonna go with because I'm gonna go with another person. I don't think I'm gonna pick the one that you're gonna pick.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick another one from Wings. I'm gonna
Okay.
pick Clara Bow.
Nice pick. That was my
Um,
backup. So there you go.
and yes, I was going to pick who I think you're gonna pick. Because like it's like a triple feature almost as far as who I think you're gonna pick. But I picked Clara Bow because I feel like in Wings she was a lot in a very good way. Like she started out the movie being so funny. Like this is how I pick my actors, I guess, from these silent films. Is if they're able to make me laugh and they're just kind of silly and just like not just dramatic.
Mhm.
She's definitely had that. Like she showed, sadness and longing. Like she wanted someone and stuff like that. And she showed jealousy when she was there and had to dress into the dress. And then it was a little risque with her too.
Right.
She's kind of like a sex symbol in that way, which is really cool. And then, but like in the beginning, she's like really, really funny. Like, she gets under the car and she's like, "What are you doing?" and stuff like that. And I don't know. I can't remember every little funny thing that she was doing, but she was kind of cracking me up. And I was like, wow, this is a movie I think I'm gonna really like. And she set the tone for it. But also a fun fact: Clara Bow apparently was the inspiration for Betty Boop.
Oh, that checks. That checks. That makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense.
she looks a lot
Um,
like her, doesn't
she
she?
does. Honestly, when I saw her, I was like, have I seen her in anything else?
Because it's
Because
like
she
she's
looks
got
so
that like mole, that little freckle,
and the big
and
eyes
you're
with
like,
the makeup. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, she's the one from It. She's the It
yeah,
girl. That's what it is.
she's the it girl.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
Oh
how I
yeah,
know her. All right, cool. Yeah, very cool. The It Girl, the
she's great.
1965. Okay, cool. Yeah, my pick was also probably foreshadowed. I didn't know which film I'd pick her for because she's in two of them. It's Janet Gaynor. But I'm gonna go with Sunrise because I think she just has this kind of luminous angelic quality in that movie that like
Oh
she does a
yeah,
lot in Seventh Heaven, but it's a little mysterious. But Sunrise, you really need to like her to root for their relationship. It's not convincing if she's not, and I think she's really great. I mean, she's just one of the best actresses to ever work, and she's amazing. I love her. This was my first and second introduction to her, so my introduction and my second time with her. But she's great. I want to see a lot more of her films. She's the first Star is Born, so it was her, then Judy Garland,
That's
and Barbara
right.
Streisand,
Yep.
and Lady Gaga. So that's where other people might know her from best. But yeah, just so amazing. She died in 1984, so she lived in the same lifetime as my parents. That's pretty cool. Yeah, she's great. Uh, yeah, there's not much else to say. Love her.
I love that pick. Obviously, I almost picked her. As soon as I saw Seventh Heaven, I was like, wow, I'm probably gonna pick her.
Yeah,
Um, and then I just really like Clara Bow, but like even when I was watching Sunrise, I was like, because you picked an actual film, I was sitting there like, you could just pick Janet Gaynor, and
I
she's
could.
just you get a lot
Yeah.
of films,
Well, if you
from
had
her.
picked her for Sunrise,
Um,
I would have picked her for Seventh Heaven, and she would have
gotcha.
been.
Yeah,
It would have been like a Sidney Poitier thing where we both picked her. Just because I think she just was the best part of both those movies. I might have picked
fair.
Clara Bow, but I'm glad you picked Clara Bow so we could represent two actresses here. But
Yeah.
there you go. So our best actors, my best actor George O'Brien from Sunrise, Chad's best actor Elle Brendel from Wings, my best actress Janet Gaynor from Sunrise, and my best actress is Clara Bow, or Chad's best actress is Clara Bow for Wings. And our best picture of this 6-film slate, the best picture of 1927-28 for us is Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. Very, very iconic, very amazing. This year of classics is off to a good start, Chad. But it's going to continue
Yeah.
next month because February is a month of love. It's a month of Valentine's. And this next slate is 10 films long, so we probably won't get it done by Valentine's Day because that would be 2 weeks,
Oh
and
no.
that's a lot. That's a lot to watch. But we are going to eventually get to it in February. And there is a classic that just exudes romance. Here's looking at you, kid. We're going to be talking about Casablanca. We're going to be talking about the 1944 Oscars for the films of 1943. Some people classify Casablanca as a 1942 film because it premiered in like the last week of December, but then it was wide release in January, so it counts. Anyway, 1943 is the year we're looking at. It's Casablanca and 9 films I've never heard about, so like that's always going to be fun. That's always
Yeah.
like, kind of interesting. So let me rattle off this slate real quick for you. In 1943, we have Casablanca, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Heaven Can Wait, The Human Comedy, In Which We Serve, Madame Curie, The More the Merrier, The Oxbow Incident, The Song of Bernadette, and Watch on the Rhine. So there you go. 10 film slate. It's going to be a little audacious, but we're very excited. I mean, if you're going to do the year of classics, you got to check a lot off the list. We've already got 6 off the list. We're going to get 10 more. Starting it off 2 months in, we're going to have 16 films under our belts. That's pretty awesome. And then in March, we're going to have another 10 film slate. So we're really marathoning here. But
Yeah.
it's part of the fun, here on Picture This. But that 10 film slate we will have likely already have seen. So it's mostly just rewatches. But those 10 films, you've already seen what those are on TV the other day. But we're recording this before Tuesday, so we have no idea what those films are for Best Picture of the next ceremony. So that's what the next 2 months are, 43, then 2024. We're kind of just going based on theming as much as we can. So February, Valentine's Day, grab your Valentine, sit down and watch Chad and I talk about Casablanca. Otherwise, Chad, is there anything else?
No, excited to kick it off for 2024, year of classics. Excited to broaden my horizons more and see a lot of these films that I've only seen their names. So now I get to actually talk about these. So, it's going to be fun.
Yep, I'm very excited. So you can find me under all these socials. Chad and I say our socials every time. Is there anything particular you want to plug, Chad?
Yeah, I'll just say, check out my channel, Chadwick Webb, over on the YouTubes. We rank stuff and do a lot of other things, just franchises, directors, stuff like that. Also check out, check out all the other stuff on the Dill Pickle Movie Network because there's so much great stuff over there. And then check out the Nerd Entertainment Network, where me, my buddy Hunter, my wife Carrie, talk horror movies. We talk Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's a lot of really great stuff that we talk about over there. Letterboxd. And my blog that I just started, which is
yes, I deleted the old one because I know you got a new one, so we'll have to put it in for the next one.
We'll have to put that in, but I'll say it here. It's cefhreviews.weebly.com. I believe that's it. It's very new, so I'm trying to remember what the actual URL is, but it's something like this.
Yep, and stick around. There's going to be some Sundance coverage coming soon from me. There's going to be a lot of cool videos coming out with the new Oscar season. I'm attempting for the first time ever the Oscars death race, which is going to be fun. And then we'll talk about the 10 nominees eventually in March, and we're going to be talking about Casablanca next month, which is going to be a lot of fun. So thank you all so much for watching, and keep being classic.